Hey everyone, thanks so much for stopping by. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
What if Monkey D. Luffy's journey to become king of the pirates was never forgotten? Given a Den Mushi that records everything, from his first steps out to sea with Kobe to the moment his crew begins to take shape, Luffy unknowingly leaves behind a living chronicle of laughter, danger, dreams, and unbreakable bonds. Told through humor-filled adventures and heartfelt moments, this story follows Luffy from the very beginning, capturing the memories he makes, the friends he gains, and the legend he slowly becomes. A long-form, character-driven retelling of One Piece that celebrates friendship, freedom, and the road to the Pirate King. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is Memories by Keke XP. Respect to author.
Chapter 11, Nami, an Arlong officer. What the hell is that? Yosaku shouted, visibly shaking in his seat. The Den Mushi lazily glanced up and stared at whatever had spooked Yosaku out. There was a large monster with green and white spots, large eyes, horns, and a nose ring. Is that another sea monster? Luffy blinked, shoving another piece of meat into his mouth, obviously not caring about the threat the sea monster posed. Wait, maybe it's a cow, and it swims. Doesn't that just make it? Sanji's face became grave. A hippo. Oi. Yosaku's sweat dropped. Are you that serious about it? And anyway, what's a creature like this doing in the East Blue? It gives me a bad feeling. The sea monster seemed to be sniffing, narrowing its large black eyes on the food sitting on the table. What's the matter, Yosaku? Luffy asked, still chewing on his meat. That creature is a monster from the Grand Line. Yosaku shouted in reply. The sea creature sniffed once again, louder this time, its eyes now directly on the food sitting on the table. He bent down, taking in the aroma of the delicious-smelling food. It must want the food. Yosaku muttered, glancing at the table. Brother Luffy. Brother Cook. Hurry up and give him the food before he overturns the ship. Luffy stood up then. He glared at the large sea monster. Gomu no. His arm shot out quicker than Yosaku and Sanji's eyes could track, but the Den Mushi could see when his fist hit the sea monster directly. Pistol. Don't you dare touch my food. You did it, Brother Luffy. That was amazing. Yosaku shouted, fist pumping. The monster shot up out of the ocean, seething and roaring in absolute rage. Uh-oh, looks like he's still pissed. Yosaku muttered, dejected. I'll just sock him again, Luffy stated before he and Yosaku were hit over the head with the bottom of Sanji's feet. You dumbasses. Don't beat up something that only wants food. If he's hungry we should just feed him. Sanji bellowed. The small snail blinked lazily. He had seen this happen often with this strange crew, so he wasn't shocked in the least. Especially since he was getting free food out of it. I'm sure it's injured somewhere so it can't find its own food, right? Sanji stated, picking up a plate of food and holding it out to the sea monster. Here, eat up. The monster bent down, opening its mouth wide and showing off its sharp, white, teeth, only to receive a kick to the jaw seconds later by none other than Sanji. Die, he yelled, his teeth becoming fanged out in a comedic way. What was that? Yosaku shouted. That thing was about to take a bite out of me too. Sanji sighed. The monster shot up from out of the ocean once again, this time only seeing red as he charged for the ship. It's coming to sink the ship. Yosaku grabbed the scared snail, holding him in his arms. Brother Luffy, I'm on it, Luffy replied, getting his arm ready. No, move aside, Sanji stated, taking a long drag from his cigarette. I'll deal with him myself. Sanji shot forward, running up the mast of the ship and jumping off towards the raging sea monster. Killua, Sanji muttered, his eyes narrowing. The others watched on in awe, their eyes shining bright like stars. Shoot, he called, hitting the hippo in its throat with a harsh kick. The monster sputtered out blood and flew away, landing into the ocean with a loud explosion of water. It didn't come out anymore. Yosh, Luffy smiled at the Den Mushi. Let's eat. Sanji came down and sat next to Luffy, dusting off his suit in the process. That was a nice exercise. These people are insane. Yosaku looked at the Den Mushi with a deadpanned expression. Click, woohoo. Luffy grinned, pumping a fist into the air. These people are seriously crazy. Yosaku shouted, face-palming repeatedly. The Den Mushi was seated on Luffy's shoulder, enjoying the rush of wind. The sea monster that they had beat up earlier was pulling their ship towards their destination at a fast pace. He had a large bump protruding from his head, and looked as if he wanted to wail. Full speed to Arlong Park. Luffy yelled happily, the snail on his shoulder bobbing its head in delight. Click, hey, I can see Arlong Park. Sanji called, pointing ahead. Over there, moo. The sea monster that was steering them towards Arlong Park suddenly moaned. Hey, don't get tired now, you hippo. Sanji shouted in frustration. I think it's because of the beating you and Brother Luffy gave him earlier, Brother Cook. Yosaku pointed out. The large creature began to swerve, turning towards the shore instead of the large building. Hey, Luffy yelled. It's this building. Where ya going? We're gonna crash. Yosaku sobbed, clinging to Sanji. Even the Den Den Mushi was shaking a little, and Luffy was also looking unnerved. The hippo crashed into the shore and the boat, along with the 3 males and snail aboard it, were sent flying through the air. Yahoo! Luffy shouted, holding the snail up so that it could take in the sights of the trees and the hard ground around it. It's like we're really flying. Sanji growled. That's because we are sent flying, you idiot. We're gonna die. Yosaku sobbed, clinging to the ship's main mast. We're gonna fall and die. They eventually did fall, but it did nothing to stop them from continuously moving forward. They sped past large trees and bushes, seemingly going downhill. Auuuo. Luffy stopped mid-scream. Zoro. Bro. Yosaku cried. Luffy. Zoro stared in shock as the ship swept him up, and he was soaring down the trail along with Sanji, Yosaku, Luffy, and the Den Den Mushi. Except Zoro was stuck to the front of the ship. They finally crashed into a bunch of trees close to another shore. The ship was in ruins, and it seemed like the only ones who came out unscathed were Luffy, Sanji, and the snail. Yosaku had his head stuck in a pile of the broken pieces of the ship. What the hell did you idiots think you were doing? Zoro yelled, nursing the bump protruding from his head. Whoops, my bad, Luffy replied, smiling as the snail lazily crawled onto his shoulder. Click, say that again, one more time. Luffy grabbed Johnny by his shirt, no longer smiling his silly little smile. And I'll kick your ass. Luffy, stop, Yosaku cried. It's not as if Johnny is the one at fault here. Well, he's making up bull crap. Luffy replied angrily. The Den Den Mushi was seated on Sanji's shoulder, shaking just a little at the sight of the pissed off Luffy. He wasn't used to seeing the future Pirate King so pissed off. Luffy, Sanji muttered, there's no way that Nami would kill Usopp. Luffy angrily bellowed, we're crewmates, we're nakama, it's fine if you don't want to believe me. Johnny stated, tears flowing down his cheeks. But I saw it with my own eyes. Just who did you call your nakama, Luffy? Nami stepped towards the little group, her arms crossed under her small bust. Nami. Luffy muttered, staring at his navigator as she approached. What did you guys come to this island for? She asked, pulling out her long staff and leaning against it. What are you talking about? Luffy stood up and let go of the sobbing Johnny. We're crewmates, aren't we? We came to get you. Tisk, you're nothing but a nuisance. Nami rolled her eyes. And, crewmates, nakama, don't make me laugh. It was nothing but a stupid little alliance. Nami, Sanji grinned. It's me. Do you remember me? Let's set sail together. Shut up. Zoro glared at the love cook. Can't you see that you're making things more complicated by butting in? What was that, you shitty Marimo? Sanji glared right back at him. I told you, she's a witch. Johnny shouted, standing up to point an accusing finger at Nami. Zoro and Sanji halted their argument to look at Johnny. If it means she can get her hands on the treasure hidden in the village, she'll gladly join the Arlong pirates and even kill innocent people. Johnny glared at Nami. She's just a cold-blooded witch through and through. You've all been deceived since the very beginning. Johnny shook his head at the Den Den Mushi perched on Sanji's shoulder. She murdered Usopp. ... And, would you like to avenge him? Nami questioned them, putting her hand onto her hip. Let me tell you idiots one thing. After that idiotic stunt that Zoro pulled, Arlong wants Roronoa Zoro and all his companions dead. No matter how strong you all may be, you are no match for Arlong and his crew of fishmen. I couldn't care less about that. Zoro replied. Where's Usopp? Where's Usopp? Nami smirked. Why, he's at the bottom of the ocean. I did kill him. Hee hee. Click. Oi, Zoro. What? Do you think Nami really killed Usopp? Sanji asked, placing a hand on the head of the small snail resting on his knee. Sanji was leaning against a tree, and across from him sat Zoro and Luffy who was laying on the ground. Who knows? Zoro muttered. Maybe after I called her a small fry she got pissed and really did kill him. I wouldn't put it past her. Small. Seconds later Zoro and Sanji were lunging at each other. Nami's breasts aren't small. Sanji shouted. Is that all you can think about? Oh. The butt of Zoro's sword and Sanji's foot were on both sides of Usopp's cheeks. He's alive, Sanji stated in surprise. But maybe not anymore. Zoro muttered. Click. Usopp, you're alive, Luffy cried. What's with your face? Who did this to you? Ah, that was actually him and I. Sanji stated, pointing at Zoro. You mean just you? Zoro replied. Ah, you guys are all here. Usopp smiled as the snail crawled up his arm and onto his shoulder. Even you, Love Cook. I've decided to come along too. Nice to meet you. Sanji smiled innocently. Whatever. In any case, the problem is Nami. She saved my life, Usopp declared. Nani? Luffy blinked in surprise. If you ask me, there must be a reason behind her joining the Arlong pirates. It's useless. A female with short, curly blue hair and big, dark eyes approached the group. No matter what you do you won't be able to change Arlong's rule. Who's she? Luffy asked. That's Nami's sister, Nojiko. Usopp replied. She's beautiful. Sanji gushed. What do you mean by useless? Zoro asked. Please don't involve yourselves with this village any further. I'll tell you about how things got this way. Nojiko sighed. So in return I want you to just leave quietly. Click. Chapter 12. Her name was Belmir. No. Luffy stood up and dusted himself off. I'm fine. I'm not interested in Nami's past. He turned and began to walk away. I'm taking a walk. The Den Den Mushi tried to crawl after Luffy, but Sanji shook his head and placed the small snail into his lap. Take a walk. You're not going to listen. Luffy. Usopp called after him. No. He replied. What's his problem? Nojiko glared at his back. Don't worry about him. Zoro replied. That's just the kind of guy Luffy is. Anyway, we'll listen to what you have to say. Though I doubt that hearing Nami's story will change anything. Zoro trailed off as he fell asleep even though there was no bubble protruding from his nose. But you're asleep. Nojiko's sweat dropped. Don't just fall asleep as soon as you say that. Usopp deadpanned. Idiot. Anyway, I, for one, will listen so that I can better understand what's going on. Me too. Sanji added. I see. Nojiko smiled. No wonder they're giving Nami so much trouble. She trailed off as the snail inched his way towards her, smiling happily. The snail crawled onto her lap and happily bobbed his head. He liked sitting in people's laps. Nojiko only chuckled. Let me go, let me go. 8-year-old Nami squirmed in Genzo's grasp, tightly clutching the navigation book in her hands. You little brat. A bookstore is supposed to have a lot of books. How many times do I have to tell you that stealing is inexcusable? Nami stuck out her tongue. Blah, my family's poor, I can't help it. Belmir, come out already. Genzo pounded on her door. Your little cat burglar has done it again. Belmir. The door opened and a tall woman with big, blue eyes, and lavender hair styled in a strange mohawk appeared in the doorway. Geez, you're noisy. What do you want? Oh, she glanced down at the small orange-haired girl. Welcome home, Nami. Yay, I'm home Belmir. Nami cheerfully replied. You stay quiet. Genzo's sweat dropped. Belmir, you need to properly discipline her. Do you have any idea how many times she's done this? You're getting a terrible reputation among townsfolk. Oh, what's the big deal? Belmir pinched Genzo's cheek. She's just a little kid. I'm sure you shoplifters once or twice when you were a kid, am I right? It's precisely because of that attitude of yours that she's… Alright. Belmir cut him off. Thanks again. You paid for her right. I don't have any money right now, so I'll pay you back next time, with my body. Don't say such idiotic things. Genzo shouted in reply, his face turning scarlet red. What's this? Belmir chuckled. Your face is all red. Later on, after Genzo left, Belmir gathered Nojiko and Nami into the small house they lived in. I'm sorry Belmir, Nami stated, but I wanted this book really badly. If you wanted it so much, then why didn't you just tell me? Belmir asked. You're such a klutz, Nami. Little Nojiko stated. If it were me, I would have stolen the book without getting caught. Belmir swiftly smacked the both of them, rolling her eyes in the process. Stealing is wrong. OWWW. Nami cried. I was only kidding. Nojiko groaned. But anyway. Nami put her hands onto her hips. You wouldn't have bought it for me even if I had asked. Of course I would have. Belmir replied. I do, in fact, have enough money stashed away to buy you a book or two. In any case, the weather's been unusually good these days, so all the orange farms have been able to harvest plenty of oranges. That's why they're so cheap lately and why we are hardly selling any. Understand? Yeah, Nami nodded. Nami was always the sneaky one. Nojiko muttered. But it was only because we were so poor. We had to live off of rice, grains, and Belmir's tangerines. But Nami, she had a real gift. A gift? Usopp asked. Yeah, Nojiko chuckled. A gift and a dream. Belmir, look at this. Nami yelled, running towards her adoptive mother with a sheet of paper in her hand. Is this a map of the island? Belmir blinked in surprise. Nami, did you draw this? Yup. Nami nodded proudly. I'm studying navigation skills. It's your dream, right? Nojiko asked. Yup. Nami smiled widely. I'm going to sail around the whole world using my navigational skills, and then make a map of the world. A map of the world, huh? I look forward to it. Belmir winked at her. Then I guess the map you drew today of this island is just one step towards your dream. But as always, Nami was the one who had a really critical eye. Nojiko rolled her eyes. She noticed every little thing. Zoro suddenly loudly snored, causing Sanji to bring his foot up and onto his head. Zoro was awake then, although he was angry. Oi, what the hell was that for? Zoro growled. Don't interrupt Nojiko-chan's story with your loud-ass snores, Marimo. Oi, what did you just call me, you shitty cook? Zoro shot back. Ahem. Nojiko cleared her throat and both men turned towards her with apologetic expressions. As I was saying, Nami has always been the perceptive one. Belmir, you don't seem to be eating much these days. Nami pointed out. But I'm eating my tangerines, aren't I? Besides, I'm on a diet anyway. Belmir replied, stitching together a dress. I don't need to eat so much either. Nojiko said, pushing away her plate. Hey, there's no need for you two to be concerned about your looks just yet. You are just kids, and kids need to eat a lot. Belmir stated with a forced smile on her face. That's a lie, Belmir. Nojiko replied, it's because we are poor that you don't have enough to eat, right? Right, wah, Nami questioned, talking with her mouth full. Is that true? Like I said, I'm on a diet. You kids should never underestimate the power of tangerines. I may be 30, but it's thanks to these sweet oranges that I still have such smooth skin. Nami, look. Belmir held up the dress she was stitching. It's finished. The dress was pink, and it had a gold lion on the front with the words, I am a lion, around it. But your hands are yellow. Nami stated. Oi, just eat your food. Belmir deadpanned. And anyway, I don't want it. It's a hand-me-down from Nojiko anyway. Well, there's nothing we can do about it. Nojiko replied. You are 2 years younger than me. I wanna wear new clothes too. But I have to wear second-hand clothes too. You're my sister, so of course I would give you my hand-me-downs. Time to tend to the oranges. Belmir muttered, completely ignoring the little squabble between the two sisters. But it's not like we are really sisters. Nami suddenly yelled. We aren't even blood-related, Nojiko. Belmir isn't my real mother. Nami. Belmir dropped the dress and swiftly smacked Nami. Belmir. Nojiko stared at her in shock. So what if you aren't blood-related? Belmir gave Nami a hard look. There's nothing special about that. Don't say such an idiotic thing ever again, Nami. Why not? Nami asked, clenching her fists. You aren't my real mother. You'd be better off without us, wouldn't you? Then you would be able to eat a proper meal, and buy all the clothes you want, and live the way you want to live. I wish. I wish. Nami glared at Belmir, tears cascading down her cheeks. I wish I was adopted by a rich family. Belmir stared at her in shock before turning her back to her. Fine then, do what you want. I don't know you anymore. If you hate this family that much then just leave, Nami. Stop it, you two. Nojiko cried. Fine, I'll leave, Nami yelled, running out the door and slamming it behind her. Nami. Usopp muttered. Long nose, please save all questions and comments until the end of the story. Nojiko stated. Alright, sorry. Anyway. So that's why you came to my home? Genzo asked, crossing his arms over his chest, his signature pinwheel still spinning. That's right, I ran away from home. Nami declared. Genzo burst into loud laughter. You think coming to the village center is like running away from home? Hey, it ain't that simple, kid. I'm sure Belmir would be a lot happier if I weren't around. Nami muttered. Why do you say that? Well, she has to use all her money because of us. And the villagers don't like her because of us. It's good to know that you are finally considering other people's feelings. Genzo chuckled. But don't worry. Belmir raised a lot of hell when she was your age too. Really? It's nothing surprising. To us villagers, she's still a hell raiser. But then, she left and came back as a fine marine. A marine? Belmir. I'll never forget that day. During a terrible storm, she saved you and Nojiko from a war zone. You don't remember because you were just a baby and Nojiko was about 3. But that's how she found you both. The 3 of you share a connection deeper than blood. Genzo softly stated. Nami. Nojiko appeared in the doorway. There you are. Come on, let's go home. Belmir is going to cook an amazing dinner for all of us. Okay. Nami smiled and took Nojiko's hand and the 2 girls ran through the village, giggling along the way. Nojiko paused in her story for a moment and took a deep breath before continuing on with the story. Pirates. Pirates are here, a villager cried. It's the Arlong pirates. No way. Arlong. Nami. Nojiko. Genzo caught up with the 2 girls. It's too dangerous for you to be here. Go hide in the forest. But Belmir. Sha ha 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 ha. Hello, worthless little humans. Arlong smirked at the villagers who cowered in fear at him and his crew. From now on, you're all going to be living under me. 100,000 belly for 1 human adult, and 50,000 belly for 1 human child. Arlong grinned. Get to it, men. Org. The fishman pirates yelled, smirking darkly. Nojiko. Nami whispered from behind the trees. What should we do? Is Belmir going to be okay? Don't worry, Nami. Nojiko replied. They won't be able to see our house from the village. After collecting money from everyone, Arlong and his men began to walk away. Nami and Nojiko exchanged sighs of relief. They didn't see Belmir's house. Wait, Arlong. A heavy-set fishman suddenly spoke. There's smoke coming from a house out of the village. Arlong narrowed his eyes. We almost missed it. Uh-oh. Usopp muttered, biting his nails. He could already tell that this did not have a happy ending. Long nose. I'm sorry. Nojiko. Let's use the back door to escape with Belmir. Nami yelled as the 2 were running towards their house. But what if the pirates are already there? Nojiko yelled. Nami bit her lip, she didn't want to think of that possibility. Wait, suddenly the village doctor was in front of the girls and he scooped them up into his arms. You two can't go back to your home. Doc, Nojiko cried. This might be hard for you girls to hear, but listen. The doctor said, before hearing an ear-piercing scream. B. Belmere. The girls froze in terror at the sound of their mother's screech of pain. The girls watched in horror as Arlong stepped onto her bloody arm with a smirk on his face. Belmere, you fool. Genzo ran towards her. Don't throw your life away. This is a meaningless fight. You can solve it with money. General. Belmere muttered. It's as he says, Marine woman. Arlong snarled. 100 grand for each adult and 50 grand for each kid. Just pay up and you're free to go. Belmere. Genzo whispered so that Arlong wouldn't hear them. How much money do you have saved up? Not nearly enough. She whispered back, breathing harshly and shakily holding her bloody arm with her hand. Arlong. Hatchin yelled. There's a meal for 3 people inside this house. Belmere, just pay the adult fee. Genzo loudly spoke. You invited me for tonight's dinner, right? Now I'm glad to know that everyone is safe. Good. That'll be 100 grand then. Arlong sneered. Pay up. Geez, what a greedy man. Sanji muttered. Cook-san. Forgive me Nojiko-chan. Okay, I've paid. Belmere stated as they were walking away. Yes, so, Genzo began, but was interrupted by Belmere. For my children. That money is my children's share. I don't have enough money to pay for my life. What? Belmere. Genzo gasped. Even if it means I'll lose my life, even if it's just mere words, I still. Belmere smiled as tears continued to spill down her cheeks. I still want to be called their mother. Those girls, they are my children, aren't they? You have children. Arlong narrowed his eyes. You tried to deceive me. Belmere. Suddenly Nojiko and Nami ran from behind the trees and towards their mother with tears running down their cheeks and snot dripping from their noses. Belmere. They screamed and ran into Belmere, capturing her in a tight hug as they continued to desperately sob. I lied, Belmere. Nami yelled. I don't want to be a part of a rich family. I want to be here with you and Nojiko. Nami whimpered as Belmere brought her damaged arm up to Nami's head and gently ran her fingers through her orange locks. She was doing the same with Nojiko's hair. I really wanted to buy you girls a lot of things, whether it be new books or new clothes. Belmere stated. Forgive me, for not being the best mother towards you all. That's just not true. Nami sobbed. We don't need anything, so please don't die. Nojiko pleaded. I still haven't shown you the world map I want to draw one day. Nami cried. These are your kids. Arlong suddenly loomed over them with a sneer on his lips. Yes, that's right. Belmere stood up and glared at the fishman. So don't lay a finger on their heads, you hear? Of course. As long as you die for them. Somebody help us. Nami shrieked. Genzo fired off bullets from his pistol, only to be slashed by one of Arlong's men. Nami stared in shock as Genzo fell to the ground with blood all over him, his own blood. Let's save Belmere. She could hear the villagers cry, only to be easily taken down by Arlong's crew. Nami and Nojiko were suddenly thrown into the house by Belmere, as Arlong pointed the gun to her chest. Nojiko. Nami. Belmere suddenly called. She spared them a glance, smiling sadly, the tears still running down her cheeks as the 2 girls tried to lunge for her. I love you. Arlong pulled the trigger, the bullet lodged itself into Belmere's heart, she was sent flying backwards, and then she was deathly still and her breathing stopped and she dropped her signature cigarette. Belmere. Nojiko sighed. Nothing was the same after that. Quote. Stop. It's fine. Don't worry about me. I just don't want anyone else to die. Arlong found out about Nami's navigational skills, and made a deal with her. So long as she continued to be his cartographer, she would have to find and give him 100 million belly in exchange for the village. I've decided to never cry again. And that I'll fight alone. So she became a member of the Arlong Pirates, in order to save this island. Click. Chapter 13. Luffy, help me. Do you people have any idea of how painful it has been for Nami these past 8 years? Nojiko asked, crossing her arms under her bust. She had to make the decision to fight alone when she was just barely 10 years old. The Den Mushi on Nojiko's shoulder suddenly looked sad. He did have a mind of his own, he was smarter than what any human would ever give him credit for. So after hearing about his red-haired friend's past, the little snail couldn't help but feel sad. So in order to save her village, she forced herself to join forces with the man who killed her mother. Usopp stated, shaking his head. Zoro only continued to loudly snore. How dare they do such a horrible thing to Nami Swan? Sanji yelled. Nojiko swiftly smacked the blonde-haired chef, rolling her eyes in the process. What was that for, big sister? Sanji asked, nursing the large bump on his head. This is exactly what I told you not to do. Nojiko huffed. Because of you idiots going around and calling Nami your friend and causing a lot of trouble, those pirates are starting to doubt her, and that puts her 8 years of hard work into jeopardy. So please, leave, don't make Nami suffer anymore. Click. Nojiko walked briskly back towards her home after having told Nami's friends to get lost. Honestly, the nerve of those people. They had no right to intrude on Nami's life. and for some reason the small snail that they carried around with them had taken a liking to her. He was currently sitting on her shoulder, but it wasn't as if Nojiko really cared. It felt nice to have the little guy sit happily on her shoulder. She could hear it over the sounds of her heels clicking on the ground. She could hear it. Someone was in Belmir's grove. Someone other than Nami. Nojiko was not about to tolerate that. And to her surprise, a bunch of Marines were crowded around Nami and Genzo with feral smirks on their faces. They didn't look as if they were there to help. They looked as if they were there to cause more destruction. "Hey!" Nojiko shouted, drawing the attention of all those around her. She approached the scene, her hands on her hips, and feeling more than a little peeved. "If you have no intention of saving this village, then get the hell out. Arlong might attack your ship if you linger around for too long." "Arlong, attack our ship?" The leader of the group of Marines chuckled. "We'll see about that, chi. Nani?" Nami stared at him with wide eyes. "Have you still not found it yet?" The Marine captain yelled. "We aren't looking for a single grain of rice here. She should have 100 million belly hidden around here. It's impossible to not find it. How do you know how much she has?" Genzo yelled, clenching his fists. Well, you see, I just had a little hunch," he replied with a dark smirk. It can't be." Nami glared at him. Was this Arlong's doing? "Oh, I wouldn't go that far." Nezumi continued to smirk. "As workers of the government we are only doing our duty of prosecuting thieves, chi. Why you Marine scum?" Genzo growled. How could the Marines let themselves be ordered around by pirates? Nojiko screamed. "It's here." One of the Marines suddenly shouted. "I found it. The treasure." Nezumi quickly pushed the Marine out of the way and lifted up the brown wooden lid. His smirk turned greedy as he stared at the wads of cash and gold. "This is amazing," he stated. "That girl sure has some talent, that's for sure. Some of these are all stained in blood." One of the Marines muttered. "Who cares?" Nezumi replied. "Money is money. Don't touch that." Nami growled, clutching her staff as she took steps towards the Marines. "Don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it." She continued to chant under her breath with a malicious look in her eyes. Nami, Nojiko and Genzo ran forward and tried to stop Nami from taking any more steps. Nezumi pulled out his gun. "Don't touch it," Nami screamed, suddenly running forward with the intent of badly hurting this man. Genzo grabbed her wrist in order to pull her back, and Nojiko ran in front of her to try to calm her down. It was then that Nezumi shot at them, aiming for Nami, but the bullet instead hit Nojiko. The female's eyes widened as she felt the shock of the bullet entering her stomach. The snail's eyes also widened immensely. Nami, Nojiko whispered, and it was as if everything suddenly went into slow motion. Genzo's eyes widened, Nami was slowly coming to her senses, and Nojiko's eyes closed before she fell backwards and onto the ground. Nojiko. Nami's eyes were wide. Nojiko. It was in this moment that Nami sounded as if she was a child, as if she was a little kid trying to wake up her older sister. Nojiko. Nojiko. Noji. Click. What the hell? What's going on, Gen-san? Don't tell me the Marines shot her. The villagers all ran towards the trio, worried looks on each of their faces. Seeing Nojiko cringe in pain made most of them gasp. How could the Marines do such a thing to an innocent civilian? Nojiko. Nami gasped as her older sister suddenly curled up in pain and tightly clutched her wounded abdomen. The Den Mushi had crawled off of Nojiko's shoulder in fright and stood next to her head instead. "Ah." Nojiko groaned lowly. "Kami, it hurts." "Hey Nami." Luffy's goofy face suddenly appeared. "Need any help?" Nami's whole body shook with fury at the sight of Luffy's face. You're still here, she growled. "Uh-oh." Luffy gulped as the red-haired female stood up and marched towards him with the snail trailing after her. Nami grabbed Luffy by his shirt with her wounded hand and got into his face. "This has nothing to do with you. So just get the hell off this island." She practically screamed at him in anger before pushing him and quickly running off. "Nami, where are you going?" Genzo called. She didn't offer a reply and kept running. Click. Luffy sat down onto the ground with the Den Mushi in his lap as they curiously watched the villagers gather up guns, knives, and pitchforks. 8 years ago, we swore not to throw our lives away. Genzo began. No matter how painful it may be living under their rule, we swore that as long as Nami was fine we would limit ourselves to a fight of endurance. All around him the villagers, including Nojiko, were nodding their heads in agreement. But this is how they have answered our endurance. He pointedly looked at Nojiko, or rather her wound. Now that our only chance of liberation has been denied, there is no longer any hope for this tiny island. But we shall never forgive those fishmen who harmed Nojiko, murdered Belmir, and toyed with the kindness of that girl. Any objections? Of course not. One villager yelled, "Let's go," as if we would accept their rule now that things have come to this. Another one bellowed, "Everyone living in this village has been prepared to fight since day one. So let's do this." "Wait, everyone." Nami suddenly appeared from behind, panting lightly. "Nami," Nojiko muttered, staring at her little sister. "Guys, don't worry about it. Put down those weapons." Nami began walking towards the group. "Please, just wait a little more." "Huh." I'll try my best again. Nami smiled widely. I promise I'll raise enough money once again. It should be easier this time. So please, I ask that you. Nami was cut off when Genzo suddenly stepped forward and hugged her. That's enough, Nami. You know that doing such a thing would be futile. You've carried all of our hopes on your shoulders for a long time. Genzo whispered. You've fought for a long time. I know that working with them must have been worse than being stabbed by 1,000 knives. You have fought well, but now, you can leave this village. What? Nami's eyes were starting to water, but she kept the tears and she wasn't done fighting yet. Nami. Nojiko cut her off. You're smart, and you've got what it takes to live. And you have a dream to fulfill. Nojiko. Nami pulled out a small dagger. No, everyone stop. I don't want to see anyone get hurt by those fishmen. You'll all die. We know. Genzo replied. Now move out of the way, Nami. Let's go, everyone. Everyone marched past Nami with anger evident in their eyes. They were marching to their deaths, but it didn't matter. They were going to die for Nami. Nami. Nojiko whispered as she marched past. Live, okay. And then they were gone. Nami sunk to her knees, clutching her arm. The female was shaking as she stared at the tattoo of the Arlong pirates on her arm. Arlong, she shakily whispered. The Den Den Mushi crawled away from Luffy and towards Nami. He wanted to help comfort her. He wanted to see her smile again. He hated to see her look so broken. The snail didn't want any of his new friends to look broken. Nami growled suddenly, glaring at the Arlong pirate's tattoo on her arm. She suddenly lifted up her dagger and stabbed it. Arlong, she growled. Arlong, she continued to stab her arm, not caring about the blood oozing out of her. Arlong, she huffed in rage and continuously stabbed herself. Arlong, AR. Her arm stopped mid-air as Luffy stood before her with his fingers wrapped around her wrist. Luffy, Nami whispered. What do you want? You don't know anything about this island. I don't. This has nothing to do with you, didn't I tell you to leave? Yeah, you did. Leave. She began to throw sand at him, her whole body trembling. Leave. Nami's tears fell quickly. All those years of holding back, all those years of standing strong, all those years came collapsing around her. She put her hand to her mouth as the tears fell faster, and her nose began to run with snot. Luffy, she whispered. She turned to him with red eyes and a trembling physique. Help me. ... Luffy took off his hat and placed it onto Nami's head. The rubber male turned away from her and took a deep breath. Of course I will, he shouted, throwing his hands up into the air. Nami stared at him in shock, before clutching the hat on her head. Luffy, she whispered. Let's go, Luffy stated, picking up the Den Den Mushi and walking off. Right, Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp looked up and began to walk with their captain. Click. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is Memories by Keke XP. Chapter 14. Meet Hachin, Chu, and Karubi. Who's the one called Arlong? Luffy calmly stated, the snail sitting on his shoulder bobbing his head in agreement, as if he was ready to fight too. Rubble and dust was everywhere. The part of the wall where a set of doors stood was now blown up. All around Luffy stood a lot of fishmen, sneering and leering at the rubber male. Behind Luffy stood Zoro, Sanji, and a shaking Usopp. And behind them stood Nojiko, Genzo, and the rest of the villagers. Arlong, the large blue fishman sitting on a throne, spoke, glaring over at Luffy. That would be me. And who are you? I'm Luffy, he replied, slowly walking towards the fishman. His steps were even and calm like the calm before the storm. Luffy, and what are you? Luffy, I'm a pirate, he replied, still walking towards him at an even pace. Hey you. Two large fishmen suddenly stood in front of Luffy, leering at him. Where do you think you're going, We can't have you going around like you own the place. You have to answer to us first. Both fishmen placed their hands onto Luffy's arms. Luffy reached up and grabbed both of their heads and knocked them together, knocking them both out. Out of my way, he hissed in reply, not giving them another glance. Arlong stayed in his seat, but his eyes were no solely focused on Luffy. What does a pirate want with me? Luffy suddenly flew forward and punched Arlong in the face. The fishman was sent flying and crashed into the wall all the way on the other side of Arlong Park. Arlong, his men cried in surprise. What's with this kid? I didn't even see that punch coming. Don't you ever? Luffy huffed, his eyes dark with anger, and he tightly clenching his fists. Make my navigator cry again. Why you? A large amount of fishmen lunged for Luffy, a murderous intent in each of their eyes. Small fries can stay back. A certain love icon shouted, before a flurry of kicks knocked them all back. Sanji and Zoro stood beside Luffy, with Usopp trembling behind them. Idiot, running in head first all by yourself. Sanji muttered, that's Luffy for you. Zoro rolled his eyes. Don't worry, Luffy replied, I ain't gonna lose. Dumbass, Sanji huffed, we aren't worried about you. I only meant that you shouldn't hog all the glory for yourself. Oh, I don't particularly mind either way, Luffy. Usopp stated, crossing his arms and putting his long nose into the air. Aren't you the brave one? Zoro snorted, looking back at Usopp. Roronoa Zoro. That's him. He's the one who tricked me. Long Nose is still alive. I thought he was dead. Pirates, Arlong sneered, making all those around him immediately shut up. So that's how you're all related. He sat back and chuckled. So your only goal from the very beginning was to get Nami. Shahahahahahah. What could 4 measly humans do? You idiots, Hatchin yelled. As if Arlong would ever fight the likes of you. I'll turn you all into fish food. He played his mouth as if it were a trumpet. Come out, beast. No way. The beast is coming out. Could it be the monster from the Grand Line that destroyed Gosa? What's going on? Usopp yelled, hiding behind Zoro. Come out, Momu. Hatchin bellowed. With a loud cry, a certain green-spotted sea cow arose from the ocean and towered over everyone. His nose ring glistened in the light. It's a monster. Usopp yelled. Sanji and Luffy gave Momu a piercing glare. So he's one of them then. Sanji muttered. Momu took one look at the 2 male pirates and instantly broke into tears, remembering the beating they gave him earlier. The large sea monster turned and began to run away, not wanting to suffer from another brutal beating. Momu, wait. Momu, where ya going? Momu. Arlong suddenly snarled, making the big sea creature stop in his tracks. Just where do you think you're going? Hey, well if you're going to run away, I ain't gonna stop you but. Arlong's eyes narrowed intensely. Well, Momu. The sea creature suddenly turned around and lunged for the 4 men, murderous intent in his eyes. Wah, here he comes. Usopp yelped. Follow Momu's lead. A bunch of fishmen pirates suddenly lunged for the group. Let's show these inferior humans what happens when they mess with the superior race. Sanji, Zoro, and Usopp were prepared to fight but were stopped when Luffy shook his head. They are all a bunch of time wasters. Leave them to me, Luffy declared, steam coming out of his nose. He then handed Sanji the Den Mushi. The rubber male placed his feet into the concrete. He took a deep breath before twisting his rubber body around and around in circles. The hell is he doing? Sanji muttered. I don't have a good feeling about this. Zoro suddenly stated. Just as Momu closed in on him, as did the other fishmen, Luffy grabbed him by his horns, ultimately stopping him in his tracks. What the? Momu. He must be a devil fruit user. Hey, let's get the hell out of here. Zoro suddenly yelled, sweat dropping when he realized Usopp had already run off. But what's he doing? Sanji asked, already exasperated. Hell if I know. Gomu. Luffy began, and that's when Momu knew he was in some deep trouble. What is he? Kill him. Pinwheel. Luffy bellowed, untwisting his body and spinning Momu around at the same time.
Yo, quick pause, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new here, share this video, and tell me in the comments which part you're loving the most.
He knocked out tons of fishman pirates in the process, and Momu looked as if he was about to go unconscious. Luffy sent the poor sea cow soaring into the water where he landed with a loud splash and did not resurface. So there Luffy stood, surrounded by knocked out fishmen, with an enraged look on his face. I didn't come here to fight all of these small fries. The one whose ass I came to kick, was yours. Luffy pointed his finger at a surprised Arlong. Splendid. Arlong gave a feral smirk. How excellent. I was just thinking about murdering you myself. Seems like we have no choice but to fight. Karubi muttered. How dare they hurt our brethren? Hatchin exclaimed. Looks like we need to teach these humans the difference between our race and theirs. Chu sighed. Looks like the main force is about to meet us. Zoro widely smirked. That was way too dangerous. Sanji yelled, bringing his foot down onto the top of his head. Ow. Luffy huffed. Are you trying to kill us too? Usopp yelled, smacking his head. Click. If this is how things were going to turn out, we should have fought from the very beginning. Karubi stated, gaining the attention of all 4 men. Arlong. Just stay right there. Men. Hatchin bent over and shook slightly. If we let you fight while you're that enraged, Chu, all of Arlong Park will be destroyed. Chu added. Take this. Hatchin muttered. Zero field of vision. That octopus is up to something. Zoro pointed out. First, boil the octopus in salt water, slice it up, and add some olive oil and paprika to make an excellent side dish while drinking. Sanji stated, handing the Den Mushi back to Luffy. Guys. Luffy deadpanned. Hear me out. I'm in a bit of trouble. Please note that Usopp was bravely standing 5 feet away from the group. Teiko Hachi black. Hatchin yelled, a wave of black ink squirting out of his mouth. As he lifted all 6 arms into the air, Sanji and Zoro moved out of the way but Luffy stood there, his feet implanted in the ground, and had to take all the ink head on. The Den Mushi on his shoulder, however, was able to tuck himself into his shell and watch the action from in there. You dumbass. Why didn't you dodge that? Zoro yelled. I can't see. Luffy covered his eyes with his ink-covered hands. My eyes. Hatchin lifted up a large chunk of the wall and stalked towards Luffy. Luffy, get out of the way. The hell are you doing? Usopp called. That's the problem, Luffy replied. I kinda can't move. He gestured towards his feet which were stuck in the concrete. Or see. What? Sanji stated. Zoro facepalmed. For God's sake, you're the one who did that to yourself. Usopp's sweat dropped. Oi. Hatchin lifted the chunk of the wall and threw it down onto Luffy with a hard blow. ... Only for it to crack in half, because Sanji stood in front of Luffy with his foot up and an exasperated expression on his face. Ah geez, he muttered. Nice one Sanji. Luffy grinned and the Den Mushi bobbed his head in agreement. Looks like I've chosen to follow a dumbass for a captain, but it's still 100 times better than being in a pirate crew that would harm a lady. For a human, you're not half bad, Kurubi stated, but a pirate going around spouting chivalrous lines. How half-assed. Meanwhile, Usopp was busy trying to free Luffy of his confinement by trying to pull him free. Would you like to test just how half-assed my chivalry really is, Mr. Fish? Sanji retorted. Despite what you may think, I've been a pirate for half my life. It seems as if you idiots don't understand just how powerful we fishman pirates are. Ah, what about now Luffy? Usopp asked as he continued to try to pull Luffy out of the ground. You're only stretching my feet. Luffy replied, picking his nose with his pinky. Are you even trying? You think you can just walk around Arlong Park like you own the place? Hatchin growled. He picked up another large chunk of the wall and stalked towards them. Ah. Usopp began running with Luffy still being pulled behind him and the Den Mushi still resting on his shoulder as Hatchin stalked towards them. Hurry up and free your feet. Oi Octopus. Zoro suddenly stood behind him. Those guys are busy. Why don't you play with me instead? Roronoa Zoro. Hatchin growled. I almost forgot about you. He threw the wall at Zoro, who swiftly dodged. How dare you trick me like that? And not only that, but you cut down my brothers. I don't care about that. What's past is past. The situation is different now. You guys are going to be doing any killing today. It's as that's gonna be cutting you all down. Good Zoro. Usopp rubbed his neck and gave a thumbs up. You can handle the octopus, whoops. He sweat dropped when he realized he had let go of Luffy. Uh-oh, Luffy. Luffy went soaring past everything and took Chu with him. He ended up right back where he started, with a pissed off Chu sitting on the ground beside him and rubbing his head while he glared at Usopp. Darn it, Luffy muttered. I'm back. Usopp gulped. My bad. Ah. The brave, long-nosed male took off running with Chu following after him. Click. Arlong. Kurubi spoke. I've already asked you to not fight. I'm not going to fight. Arlong replied as he walked towards the group, which was now missing Usopp and Chu. But, oi, Luffy suddenly growled. I'm gonna kick your ass. His rubber fist shot forward in an attempt to hit the captain of the Arlong pirates, only for it to be easily dodged as Arlong caught his fist. You idiots really think you can beat us? Arlong sneered. Hey, what if we do? Sanji pointed out. You bet I think so, you idiot. Luffy yelled. Now let go of my hand. Zoro snorted. Looks like he still has something to say. Arlong suddenly kneeled down and used his claws to rip a circle around the concrete that held Luffy prisoner. He then lifted Luffy, along with the Den Mushi on his shoulder, and the concrete Luffy was trapped in up high with a smirk on his face. Why don't we play this game? Devil fruit users are said to be unable to swim. But in this situation even a non-devil fruit user would be unable to swim. Shahaha. Don't tell me he's gonna throw him into the sea. Sanji growled. Gomu Gomu no pistol. Luffy yelled, throwing a punch with his free hand and hitting Arlong square in his mouth. Arlong grabbed Luffy's fist with his teeth and bit down hard. Gah! Luffy cried in pain. The Den Mushi on his shoulder was shaking slightly. The sight of Arlong's murderous eyes and the fact that Luffy was in an uncompromising situation only served to scare the small snail even more. Arlong then threw the rubber mail and Den into the ocean. Click. Chapter 15. Zoro and Sanji's struggle. MMF. Luffy covered his mouth with his hands, trying desperately to let air fill his lungs, but he was quickly sinking to the bottom of the water, and so was the Den Mushi that was barely hanging onto his shoulder. He was a snail that could not swim at all. No matter how hard he tried, he wasn't strong enough, nor was he fast enough. It only took them a few seconds more before they landed at the bottom of the water, Luffy's hands still desperately covering his mouth and the Den Mushi retiring inside its shell once again, though that did nothing to keep the water out. The snail's vision was blurring, and it could feel Luffy begin to lean over to the side and fall. The rubber mail had let go of his mouth and his eyes were drifting shut and his body went limp as he lost his balance in the water and fell onto the ocean floor. The Den Mushi himself wasn't faring so well and he too began to close his eyes. It was only seconds later when the Den Mushi realized he was floating upwards. He was surprised, but he realized that he was in fact very small and very light. Of course he would float back up. But he didn't want to leave his rubber friend behind. He tried to grab onto Luffy, but his efforts were in vain. He soon made his way back to the surface and spit out a lot of water. He hoped he would never have to do that again, and he knew he wasn't strong enough to jump in and save his rubber friend. He was only a baby after all. He was able to see the octopus and Zoro standing face to face ready for battle. What's the matter, Roronoa Zoro? Hatchin taunted, holding up 6 swords with his 6 arms. You already look exhausted. That's none of your concerns. The former pirate hunter replied, tying his black bandana around his head and clutching one of his swords between his teeth. Brother, catch! Yosaku and Johnny cried, throwing their swords at the swordsman. I'll show you the vast gap in skill that's a human with only 2 arms could only hope to surpass. Hatchin stated, the Sao sword style that can only be used by a person with 6 arms and a supple body. Brother, watch out! Yosaku and Johnny yelled desperately as their swords were headed towards Zoro at a fast speed. Takoashi Kaiken, Hatchin bellowed, raising up all 6 arms and all 6 swords and bringing them down upon Zoro. It was then that the former bounty hunter sprung into action, grabbing both of Yosaku and Johnny's swords and dodging the attack. 3-sword style, he began, narrowing his eyes. Nayu, I'd like to see you take on my barrage of attacks with only 3 swords. Hatchin yelled, trying desperately to land a hit on Zoro who swiftly dodged each attack. Toru Nagashi, Zoro yelled, suddenly standing behind Hatchin with his swords in the air as if he had just delivered a fatal attack to the octopus. Hatchin stood there for a moment, wondering what had just happened when he suddenly leaned forward and coughed up a massive amount of blood. The octopus had a large wound on his chest area he hadn't seen that coming. You've really made me mad now. Hatchin hissed, turning to glare at the former bounty hunter who apparently wasn't giving any shits. I swear I'll kill you. Hatchin declared. Just think about it in a logical way. There's no way that you could beat my 6 swords when you only have 3. Logically. Tisk. Zoro rolled his eyes. Seems like you've made a large error in your calculations. I may only have 3 swords, but there is a difference in the weight between our swords. The weight? You mean to say that your swords are heavier than mine? Hatchin snorted. Don't be stupid. You may not realize it just by looking at them, but each of my swords weigh 300 kilograms. Far heavier than any swords you puny humans could ever yield. HMPH. Zoro rolled his eyes once again. I have nothing to say to an idiot like yourself. 6-sword style, octopus pot stance. Hatchin stated, making all 6 of his swords touch, creating a point and lunging for Zoro, only for it to be halted by one of Zoro's swords. Take this, Hatchin whispered. New Year's. Octopus opener. Zoro's arms were thrown up, exposing his heavily damaged chest. Body slam. Hatchin yelled, butting his head against the swordsman's wounds. He went flying backwards, looking ready to pass out. You aren't about to have a safe landing. Hatchin declared. 6-sword style, ultimate technique. He spun all 6 swords above his head, making it resemble a modern fan. 6 swords waltz. Touch it and you'll be dead. Time to dice you up. Zoro flew right into the attack and blood was splattering everywhere. The villagers watched on in horror. Was the green-haired swordsman really about to die? After all the effort he had just put forth, for the sake of their village. Oh no, he couldn't have survived that. Bro. All of a sudden Hatchin stopped moving and stood perfectly still, his 6 arms still in the air and his eyes wide, his mouth agape. Arg. The octopus cried in pain as it was revealed that all 6 of his hands had been cut and they were all oozing scarlet red blood. Nayu. Hatchin fell onto the ground, holding his hands tightly as they began to sting. Zoro only stood there with a look of total indifference. What just happened? Suddenly Hatchin sprung up, his eyes narrowed as he was very angered this time. I really can't forgive you this time, not after the stunt you just pulled. It's time to finish you off, Roronoa Zoro. Bro, you've gotta get out of there. You're hurt real bad. If only I was strong enough. I could go out there and help brother Zoro myself. One more time, Hatchin yelled. 6-sword style, octopus pot stance. He made all 6 swords touch in a point once again. Time for you to die. The octopus lunged at Zoro with a loud battle cry. This attack is unavoidable, just like all my other attacks. Even if these wounds are enough to kill me. Zoro muttered to himself. I can't afford to die, and in order to beat that abnormal guy, Mihawk, I can't be normal either. The swordsman got into a fighting stance once again. Demon, he muttered. New Year's. Hatchin began. Slash. Zoro yelled and stopped all of Hatchin's movements. What's going on? What happened? The Den Mushi's eyes landed on Hatchin's 6 swords. They were all broken. Now do you understand the difference in weight between our swords? Zoro tsked, his 3rd sword still in his mouth. I hope you're satisfied, octopus. Tatsu. Nayu. Hatchin growled and resorted to his last tactic, which was to throw punches Zoro's way and to hope for the best. Takoyaki punch. Maki. Zoro growled, and seconds later Hatchin was flying through the air and blood, scarlet red blood, was following after him. He landed with a big crash on the ground, his eyes rolled to the back of his head and his mouth wide open. He didn't move at all. He had finally been knocked unconscious. Sorry, but I couldn't care less about you. Zoro sighed, putting away his swords. I have to save my friends. Besides, that's what you get for making Nami cry. The swordsman plopped onto the ground, thoroughly exhausted. He had never been pushed so hard in his entire life, but he didn't regret it either. It only meant that he would have to become even stronger. It meant that he still had a long way to go. He snorted as the snail made its way towards him, a happy smile on his little face. Well, he was smiling until he looked up and saw a shadow looming over them. Roronoa Zoro. Kurubi sneered, lifting his arm into the air and getting ready to slice him up. How dare you cut down Hachin? He brought his arm down on the former bounty hunter. Only for it to be blocked by the foot of a certain Love Cook. It's him, Brother Cook. He's alive. Curly Eyebrow is alive. You sure did punch me back pretty far. Sanji stated, letting out a short laugh. There's actually a human in the East Blue who can actually survive after a hit from me. Kurubi raised an eyebrow. HMPH. It seems I'm being underestimated. Click. Oi, Zoro. Sanji frowned. You stay put. Don't try to jump into the dough with those kind of injuries, it's likely that you will die. Shut up. I bet Luffy's at his limit already. Zoro frowned. And we don't have time to wait for your fight to end. The Den Den Mushi frowned at the sight, not wanting Zoro to jump into the water either. I know we don't have any time left. I know that better than anyone, so say no more. Sanji grinned then, his signature cigarette still in his mouth and a trail of blood running down his face due to a cut on his forehead, but he grinned nonetheless. The Love Cook took off his shoes. I'll go in, so quit your complaining. He then hopped into the water. Koo ha ha ha, Kurubi smirked. How interesting. A human dares to challenge me underwater. You dumbass. Zoro's sweat dropped. That's exactly what they want you to do. You'll be at a disadvantage. Sha ha 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 ha. Arlong laughed darkly. It's time for you stupid humans to learn your place. Honestly, how stupid could he be? He laughed even more when Kurubi jumped into the water after him. Click. The Den Den Mushi looked up in surprise, as did Zoro, when moments later Sanji's head popped up and gulped in oxygen as he treaded in the water. Hey! Zoro blinked as the Love Cook made his way onto the surface and continued to try to get more air into his lungs. What happened? Don't worry. Sanji stated in between pants. Luffy's fine. Really? Half fine, you could say. Half fine. I'll tell you later. Sanji stood up and pointed at the water, his eyes narrowed and his signature cigarette no longer in his mouth. Get your ass back up here, you damn fish. He yelled. It's time I finally kill you. Kurubi emerged moments later, coughing harshly. You still don't understand, do you? Whether it be on land or in the water, the difference in our strength is immense. And not only that, but you've invoked my wrath now. He climbed onto the surface of the water. I will kill you with the essence of Fishman Karate. He took a deep breath, closing his eyes momentarily before opening them once again. Earlier I sent you flying with my 100 title smashing true punch, and you still survived. But the chances of you surviving my ultimate technique, 1000 title smashing true punch is 0. Kolur. Sanji suddenly lunged forward, lifting his leg up and bringing it against Kurubi's face. Epel. He added, bringing his foot down onto his shoulder. Kotelet. He smashed his foot against Kurubi's rib cage. Arg. Kurubi cried out in pain, coughing up small amounts of blood. What did you say you would take from me? Sanji asked in a dark tone. Jigget. He yelled, delivering a harsh blow to Kurubi's leg. Why you? Kurubi growled, trying to push himself into a standing position as Sanji prepared to deliver another attack. Take this. My ultimate 1000 title. Mutton shot. Sanji growled, nailing Kurubi in his stomach with his feet. The fishman pirate was sent flying back, past Arlong, and through a wall. He didn't get up, it looked as if he had been knocked unconscious. HMPH. Sanji huffed. I guess he didn't want dessert. Well, small fries will be small fries. Looks like this game is ours for the taking. Arlong suddenly stood up, his fists clenched and his body shaking with anger. How dare you do this to my brothers? He glared at Zoro and Sanji with enough ferocity to make the Den Den Mushi flinch. You're getting too cocky if you think you've already won. Hey, Love Cook, Zoro suddenly said. What did you mean when you said Luffy was only half fine? It means he's not dying, at least not for the time being. Sanji replied, but I'll have to make one more trip down to the ocean floor. It seems like he's not gonna let us though. Zoro stated, his hands reaching for his swords. Ah, Sanji sighed. Looks like this battle has yet to be won. Click. Chapter 16. Freeing Luffy and Nami's decision. Am I dreaming? What did that shark just do? I thought he only threw water, but those two are over there coughing up blood. Sanji and Zoro were both on the ground, the snail sitting beside them with a worried expression on his face. He was scared just a second ago. Both men were wearing cocky smirks and were ready to do battle once more, but here they were on their hands and knees coughing up blood. To be more precise, Zoro seemed as though he was dead and Sanji looked as if he was seconds away from death. The Den Den Mushi looked over at Arlong, who had a sneer on his lips and was standing at his tallest height. The fishman had that look in his eye, that crazed look that came with a person who was about to murder someone. Brother Cook, don't stand up. What happened to Brother Luffy? Please don't tell me he's dead. Sanji was standing then. He was still coughing up a lot of blood, but he was standing nonetheless. The Den Den Mushi stared at Sanji with wide eyes before he glanced over at Arlong. The fishman rolled his eyes at the sight. I don't even need to touch you pathetic humans. Arlong sneered. He held up his hand, which was dripping with water. Just a small amount of water is more than enough to kill the likes of you. This is the grave difference in power between us fishmen and you pathetic humans. Shut the hell up, Sanji growled, lifting up his leg. Poitrine shot. He swung his leg at Arlong, only for his attack to be dodged. Arlong sneered once again before throwing a small amount of water at the cook, which sent Sanji flying back onto the ground, beside Zoro and the Den Mushi. Damn, Sanji muttered, wiping away blood. Fighting us is just a game to him. He's only splashing some water on us, but… Sanji coughed up more blood. It's as strong as a blast from a gun. Is this how strong a shark-type fishman really is? Hurry up and die already. Arlong growled. It's not as if your lives are actually worth anything. Arlong. A familiar feminine voice suddenly called, and all heads turned towards the source of the voice. The Den Mushi smiled in delight when he saw Nami standing there with a bandage around her arm and hand, and with a long staff in her hands. Perched on her head was a certain someone's straw hat. It's Sister Nami. Na-chan. Nami-san. Nami. Arlong smirked, glancing over at his navigator. What great timing. I was just about to kill these pathetic pirates. What brings you here? Nami examined the area. She stared at Zoro, who was knocked out in a puddle of his own blood. She stared at Sanji, who was struggling with his breathing. Kurubi and Hachin were both knocked unconscious. The Den Mushi was staring at her with his big, teal eyes. And Luffy, Usopp, and Chu were nowhere in sight. What did I come here for? Nami slowly began to speak. I came here, to kill you, Arlong. Click. To kill me. Arlong blinked. You. Kill me. Sha ha 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 ha. In the 8 years you have been with me, how many times have you tried to kill me and actually succeeded? Whether by assassination, poisoning or surprise attacks, you tried your hardest and yet here I am still breathing. He spread out his arms, still laughing harshly. Nami, you of all people should know by now that it's impossible for inferior humans to kill me. So listen well, I'm not gonna kill you. And I won't let you escape either, you're gonna be my cartographer forever. Nami stared at him in fear. Her body was trembling under his harsh stare, and her mind was reeling as it was processing everything he was saying. But you also know that I'm an understanding guy. Arlong continued. I don't want to chain down a little girl such as yourself. You're still very small, but you're smart. I'm planning to kill every human out here, other than yourself. He gestured to the villagers and to Zoro and Sanji. But if you agree to join the Arlong pirates again, I'll allow all the villagers in this puny town to live. The villagers stared at the fishman pirate, with looks of disgust, fear, and annoyance. I can't say the same for these two idiots though. Arlong, gently, kicked Sanji in the side, causing him to fall over. They've pissed me off too much. So what do you say, Nami? The Den Mushi stared at Sanji and Zoro, both of whom now looked dead. He then shakily looked up at Arlong, who seemed to not notice his presence. Then he glanced over at Nami, whose face was devoid of all emotion. Will you choose to side with me and save your fellow villagers? Or will you side with these weaklings and attempt to fight me? Tell me, Nami, please. Are you with me? Arlong narrowed his eyes at Zoro and Sanji. Or with them, you rotten monster. You're still forcing Nami to join your crew, either way. That's unfair. Na-chan doesn't deserve this life. Minna, Nami suddenly yelled, clutching the straw hat sitting atop her head. All eyes were on Nami as she sucked in a breath and released. She turned towards the villagers with a sad smile on her face. I'm sorry, but will you please die with me? All right, the villagers shouted, holding up all their weapons. We'll gladly die for you, Nami-chan. I see. Arlong's smirk turned into a frown. So you choose to all die, huh? BFFFFFFT. Suddenly a large spurt of water could be seen coming from the other side of the village. What the hell? Arlong stared at the water spurt in curiosity. It worked. Sanji muttered, smiling a small smile. Now all we have to do is free his legs. Oh, Zoro muttered in reply, rubbing his head. So that's what's going on here. Ah, Yosaku and Johnny yelled, looking at Nami with large smiles on their faces. Brother Luffy must be. And then Zoro was standing, or at least was trying to stand, and gave Nami a thumbs down which brought a smile onto her face. 30 seconds. Zoro told Sanji, putting his sword into his mouth. That's all I've got. That's all the time we get. That's more than enough time for me. Sanji replied, jumping into the water after throwing off his shoes. There shouldn't be a fountain over there. Arlong bristled. That rubber brat must be. He stepped towards the water, but Zoro was instantly in front of him with all his swords pointed at the shark-type fishmen. Don't pay any heed to them. Zoro growled. Pay attention to me, you half-fish mutant. Arlong licked his lips. Didn't I tell you to never call me that again, Roronoa Zoro? He growled and raised his fist. Egg star. A voice suddenly shouted, and 3 eggs were thrown into Arlong's face. Zoro blinked, looking around. Where did that come from? I'll back you up, Zoro. Brother Usopp, is that you? You're so brave. Are you alright? Where are you? He's sure to make a brave appearance. Usopp's head popped up from behind the cracked wall. Fight without any worries, Zoro. Zoro's sweat dropped. That's where you were. The Den Mushi smiled once again, happy to see that his long-nosed friend was still alive. Usopp. Nami looked at him, still smiling brightly. Nami. Usopp smiled right back at the female. Guess what? I took down one of Arlong's officers all on my own. Really? It's nice to know that you'll come over here and bravely fight too. Zoro deadpanned. Click. I don't know what's going on, but Brother Cook's actions seem to be the key to our victory. Come on, Brother Zoro. Hang in there. It's said that the sea robs devil fruit users not only of their powers. Arlong began, walking towards Zoro. But also every bit of their energy as well. The fact that that rubber brat isn't dead yet means that someone has been interfering with our game. Interfered with our game? Zoro snorted. I never considered this game to be a fair one. The green-haired swordsman held up his swords as Arlong approached. Even so, I do need to see who's been interfering. Arlong growled. The Den Den Mushi was still on the ground, recording every moment, but it seemed as if he was beneath Arlong's notice. Hey Arlong, Usopp yelled, waving his arms. Look over here. Usopp rubber band. He held up a rubber band and made it seem as if he were about to slingshot it over at Arlong. The hell are you doing? Nami deadpanned, shaking her head. Arlong didn't spare Usopp a single glance. You standing before me means that you want me to kill you first, right Roronoa Zoro? Tisk. Zoro rolled his eyes. I'll break that nose that you're so proud of. With that being said, he swung his sword at Arlong's nose, only for the sword to stay still against his nose no matter how hard Zoro pressed the sword against it. Fool. Arlong snarled. It's because my nose won't break that I'm so proud of it. Maybe if you were in better health you might have made a scratch on it. Quote. Hey, look over there. The octopus has gotten back up. But what's he doing? Phew. Hatchin was indeed standing up once again. He put his arms down and sighed in relief. Phew. I thought that rubber band would have hit me. Oi. Everyone shouted, sweat dropping. Usopp blinked. I mean, that was my exact intention. Octopus. Zoro sighed in frustration. I won't let you bastards have your way. Hatchin yelled. I'll kill your friend. Hatchin dived into the ocean. It was then that Arlong brought his nose down onto Zoro's chest, right on his horrible wound. Brother Zoro. Arlong lifted Zoro up by his neck and stared in shock at his wounds. What the hell? Someone with these kind of wounds should already be dead. Zoro. Nami clamped her hands over her mouth and stared in shock. Zoro, please stay alive. She whispered. Zoro, if you had lied down quietly, those wounds wouldn't have opened again. Arlong stated. Waahhhhhhhhhhhhh. And suddenly Luffy was flying through the air with a loud battle cry. Brother Luffy. Luffy. Nami looked up in delight. So damn late, that moron. Zoro muttered. Zoro. Luffy's arms stretched and he grabbed Zoro, and then Zoro was flying away from Arlong and Luffy was flying towards the shark-type fishman pirate. You dumbass. Over half the village bellowed. Click. Chapter 17. Nami. You are my friend. Gomu Gomu no. Bullet. Luffy yelled, shooting his rubber fist into Arlong's stomach. Gomu Gomu no. Gatling gun. His fist shot out at rapid speeds, punching Arlong all over his body, and the fishman pirate couldn't do anything to stop the attack. Arlong was soon sent flying backwards and landed on the rubble that was once his throne. Phew. Luffy stretched his body, yawning loudly. That was a good workout. The Den Den Mushi grinned at the sight of the Straw Hat Boy. He really was alive. Luffy bent down and picked up the small, happy snail and placed him onto his shoulder. Arlong, TSKED. What exactly did you just do? My warm-up. The future Pirate King replied, cracking his knuckles. Sha ha ha ha. Arlong quietly laughed. Not bad for a human. But you might have been happier had you died peacefully under the sea. Luffy continued to stretch his body, shrugging his shoulders and wiggling his toes. No, actually I'm very happy that I was rescued. Do you have any idea of how angry I am? Arlong glared at Luffy. The seething rage I feel after seeing my beloved brothers being crushed by you pathetic lot. Within time you'll come to realize that it probably would have been better if you had died at sea. I wonder if brother Luffy will be alright. Even that fierce attack just now didn't affect Arlong at all. Enough about that. Just how far was brother Zoro sent flying? Get him, Luffy. Usopp cried. I'll back you up. Enough with your backup. Nami's sweat dropped. Do you know what the hopeless difference between you and I is? Arlong asked as he slowly rose to his full height. Luffy tilted his head to the side. Nose? He asked, getting into a fighting stance. Is he joking? Or jaw? I don't think so. Webbed hands. No. It's our race. Arlong snarled, lunging at Luffy with his teeth, an attack Luffy was barely able to dodge. Arlong continued to lunge at Luffy with his teeth, with the intent to murder him in mind. Luffy scooped up the small snail as he continued to dodge Arlong's attacks. But Arlong moved with fierce speed and pinned Luffy to one of the columns and glowered at the rubber male. He opened his jaw and bit down on Luffy, only for the male to dodge by simply stretching his neck and moving to the side. Arlong's razor-sharp teeth bit into the column, causing it to crumble and fall into rubble. Phew. Luffy blinked after just barely escaping Arlong's death bite. Talk about scary. This is a power we fishmen are born with. Arlong calmly stated. A power that the heavens did not bestow upon your kind. Which is why you are the inferior species. We have been on completely different levels since birth. Luffy placed the snail onto his shoulder and glared at Arlong. So what? Don't get so cocky just because of that. Luffy punched one of the columns with his fist, causing it to crumble. I don't need to chew through stone to crush it. Ha, nice one bro. That's right, the end result is the same. Such frivolous objections. Arlong sneered. You humans truly are an idiotic, weak, pathetic race. What can you do? You couldn't even save yourself from drowning. Luffy bent down and picked up 2 swords. It's because I can't do anything that I need help. Shishishi. Luffy rushed towards Arlong and began randomly attacking the shark-type fishman with the 2 swords. What the hell? Arlong growled, dodging each attack. You're just randomly swinging those swords around. He was cut off when Luffy suddenly slapped him. Arlong's eyes narrowed in anger. I don't have time to play around with you. He took Luffy's swords and flung them behind him. So enough with your, shut your trap. Luffy yelled before his fist shot forward and nailed Arlong in his jaw. The bottom part of his mouth clashed with the top part, and his teeth were instantly broken. The shark-type fishman flew onto his back and grabbed at his mouth while crying out in pain. Whoa, he broke Arlong's teeth. Luffy huffed. Of course I don't know how to fight with swords, you dumbass. Just what is he trying to say? I don't know a thing about navigation either. I can't cook. I can't lie. I'm confident that I wouldn't be able to survive if there weren't other people to help me. Luffy stated, giving Arlong a hard glare. Hey, Usopp deadpanned. Why am I just a storyteller? Shahahaha, aren't you quite honest about admitting how worthless you are? Arlong sat on the concrete Indian style. Must be pretty hard for your crewmates to deal with an incompetent fool like you. It's a wonder why they'd try so desperately hard to save you. You call yourself fit to be a captain, yet you don't even have an ounce of self-confidence. Just what exactly can you do, boy? Luffy cracked his knuckles. I can beat you. Alright, brother Luffy. Woohoo. He can do it. Damn straight. Sanji smirked softly. If you lose, I'll kill you. Zoro muttered. And I'll back you up. Usopp yelled, fist pumping. Enough babbling, you pathetic humans. Arlong shouted and his cracked teeth fell out, only to be replaced by a new set. Ah, his teeth grew back. Luffy stated in surprise. I am a shark after all. My teeth will grow back every time. Arlong replied, standing to his full height. And the new ones are always stronger than the last ones. This is the gift bestowed to me by the heavens. He pulled out his teeth twice, and both times they grew back. He held up his pulled out teeth with a vicious smirk. Now do you realize just how much we are superior to the humans? Tooth gun. Arlong shot forward and his 3 sets of teeth began to unleash a barrage of attacks on Luffy. The rubber male was quickly cornered, and just as Arlong's teeth were about to chew him up, Luffy lifted up one of the fishmen lying on the ground and used him as a shield. Hey Arlong, it hurts. The random fishman muttered as Arlong sank his teeth into him. Phew. Luffy breathed a sigh of relief. The Den Den Mushi sitting on his shoulder was shaking slightly, but stood strong. He had to become stronger for Luffy and for Luffy's friends. And the snail knew that Luffy could kick Arlong's ass. Why you? Arlong growled. That gives me an idea. Luffy suddenly grinned. Click. How dare you use one of my brethren as a shield? Arlong snarled. What are you talking about? You're the one who attacked him. Brother Luffy says he has a good idea. What could it be? Did he come up with a secret strategy or something? Tooth gun. Arlong shouted once again and lunged at Luffy using the same attack as before. Luffy swiftly dodged each attack, and as soon as Arlong came close enough, Luffy kicked him in his jaw once more. His teeth fell out once more. Yosh, it came out. Luffy grinned and picked up Arlong's teeth. Do you still not understand that no matter how many times you try, that it's futile to try to crush my teeth? Arlong bellowed. Could it be that this has something to do with the idea brother Luffy came up with? Luffy put Arlong's teeth into his mouth. Look, I have fangs too. The snail sitting on his shoulder sweat dropped. Just how long are you gonna be playing around? Arlong snapped, and swung his teeth at Luffy. The rubber male wasn't able to dodge this time and took a stab to the side. Ah, Luffy yelped, clutching his side. I've been bitten by a shark. It's because you were playing around. Ow. Luffy cried out once more when Arlong's teeth bit him in his stomach. The Den Den Mushi stared at the wound on Luffy's stomach with wide eyes. Ugh. Arlong gasped when Luffy suddenly bit Arlong on his shoulder, using Arlong's own teeth. The shark-type fishman threw Luffy off of him and clutched his shoulder. Ha. Luffy smirked. How does it feel to be bitten by your own teeth? They may be my teeth but with your feeble jaws. Arlong tsked, taking the set of teeth out of his shoulder. Listen up, what defines a shark's teeth is its ability to rip flesh. Arlong bit down on Luffy's arm, spilling lots of blood. Ack, Luffy cried. The snail stared at Arlong's mouth on Luffy's arm in fear. He was so close to him. If he had went an inch higher he would have bitten him, and killed him. His arm's gonna be torn. Brother Luffy. Arg. Luffy began to scream before he brought his arm, along with Arlong, up and slammed him onto the ground. Luffy pulled his arm from Arlong's mouth and scrambled away from him. The rubber male pulled Arlong's teeth out of his stomach and coughed up blood. The Den Den Mushi rubbed his tiny head against Luffy's ear, as if to comfort him. Luffy only sighed and slowly stood up, turning to face the other pirate captain. Luffy blinked, looking around. Where did he go? Luffy, Usopp yelled. The water. Suddenly the fin of a shark popped up out of the water. Luffy stared at it in shock. There's a shark in the water. Yeah, Usopp deadpanned. That's Arlong. What? Luffy frowned. He dove underwater. And suddenly Arlong flew out of the water, headed straight for Luffy and the Den Den Mushi. His sharp nose hit Luffy right in his stomach, causing the rubber mail to fly into the wall. The snail sneezed a bit as the dust around them settled. Luffy clenched his teeth and held his stomach, which was oozing more blood. Damn it, barely dodged that. Luffy muttered. Arlong flew back into the water, leaving Luffy to stare after him in thought. HMPH. Luffy stood up and glared at the water. Come at me, you stupid shark. He held his hands out in front of him and pulled all the fingers of one hand using his other hand. Gomu Gomu no shield. What's that stance? Don't tell me he's seriously planning to stop Arlong with that. Arlong shot up from out of the ocean once more, smirking as he headed straight for Luffy and the Den Den Mushi. Only for his attack to be stopped as Luffy wrapped his fingers around Arlong's face with a smirk of his own and pushed off the shark-type fishman, bouncing away and landing against the side of the building. Arlong, on the other hand, went flying into the building. What happened to Luffy? Was he hit? No. He bounced himself away from Arlong. Shishishi. Luffy grinned. That one work on me. The snail sitting on his shoulder blinked, dazed. He had already been through a lot with Zoro and Sanji, and now he and Luffy were jumping all around from place to place. Shark on darts. Arlong dived for Luffy once more. You can't escape from me. And then he went for Luffy once again as they were both falling towards the ground. Time to finish this. As if I'll let you. Luffy shouted. Gomu Gomu no net. His fingers wove around each other and became bigger, creating a rubber net that trapped Arlong. Followed by, he placed his feet together. Gomu Gomu no spear. And with that being said, Luffy's feet shot down and nailed Arlong in his stomach, causing the fishman to throw up blood as he went down. Woohoo. Go Luffy. It worked. Is he dead? Luffy blinked, and peered down at him, but got his answer really soon. Arlong's eyes were nearly white. His pupils were dilated more than what one would assume to be possible. The veins in his eyes were a dark red. Arlong's eyes changed. They are the same eyes that a sea king has when it goes berserk. Luffy must have made him really angry. That's the first time I've seen those eyes. Nami muttered. Arlong suddenly grabbed Luffy by his hair. How dare you do that? He began as Luffy and Den Den struggled to get free. To me, a fishman. You're superior. Arlong flung Luffy all the way towards the rubble, where Luffy landed as if he hadn't just been thrown by a fishman. Ah, that was scary. Luffy scratched his head. It didn't hurt, but he looks really pissed. Oh. Luffy blinked as Arlong began to move towards him. Arlong punched the wall, and Luffy quickly moved away. Arlong brought his hand out from the wall, and held up a large sword-shaped saw. That's one big-ass saw. What's that? Luffy yelled. Even Den Den was shaking, though he had been shaking throughout the whole battle, so this was nothing new. Luffy, that's Karibaki. Nami yelled. Arlong swung huge saw at Luffy, and the rubber male had no choice but to dodge each attack the best he could. The snail was barely holding onto Luffy's shoulder by this point in time. Luffy was finally forced to crash through one of the windows, away from the crowd. Now it was only he, the Den Den Mushi, and Arlong. Click. Luffy sat with his back against the wall, the Den Den Mushi still sitting on his shoulder. Arlong loomed over them with a sadistic smirk. Don't get in my way anymore, he stated, tightly clutching his sword-shaped saw. You damn rubber brat. What is this room? Luffy asked, looking around curiously. It's full of paper. Indeed, there was paper everywhere. Tall stacks of old papers sat side by side on the hard floor. There was a bookcase filled to the brim with navigation books. And sitting close to Luffy was a chair and a desk with a half-finished map on it. They're not just papers. These are all the maps that Nami spent 8 years drawing. Arlong looked around the room, that ugly sadistic smirk still on his face as he looked at all the well-drawn maps. For us fishmen, obtaining data about the sea is simple, but using that data to draw maps is another matter. Even if you search the whole world, you won't find anyone who could draw maps as accurately as these. Nami is a true genius. Ah, Luffy frowned, and now the Den Den Mushi sitting on his shoulder was no longer shaking. The small snail was growling softly, wanting to attack this fishman for making his friend suffer for 8 whole years. There would be nothing more tragic than to waste those God-given talents that she possess. Arlong continued on. Quote. Luffy picked up a pen from off the ground. This pen is encrusted with blood. For Nami, there is no better happiness than to stay here and to continue to draw maps. For the sake of my ambition, that is. Arlong pointed his sword-shaped saw at Luffy with a loud chuckle. Once we fishmen learn everything there is to know about the seas from Nami's maps, we will be invincible. The world shall then become my empire. And this island, or the East Blue in essence, shall be my stepping stone for that. Quote. Luffy continued to stare at the pen. Do you think you could use her more effectively than I? Luffy dropped the pen, and sat deathly still for a moment before he gripped the end of Arlong's sword-shaped saw. Use. He squeezed it hard enough to break it. Just what do you think she is? She's a brilliant cartographer. Arlong raised an eyebrow at the sight of the end of his sword being crushed by the rubber captain. Of course she is still a member of your inferior race, but she's got a good head on her shoulders. I'll have her continue to draw maps in this room forever. I'll buy her any clothes she would ever want, so she will never be in want as long as she lives. In return, all she has to do is draw maps for me. Because you see, we are crewmates. And suddenly Luffy stood up and kicked the desk out of the window. He turned around and punched the bookcase, sending it flying out of the building too. Just what do you think you're doing? Arlong snapped. Luffy didn't answer, and instead threw yet another desk out of the building. Arlong lunged at him, desperate to keep his precious maps inside the room, but Luffy was having none of it and he dodged the attacks while throwing more stuff out of the building. Arlong finally managed to grab Luffy by his neck. Those took 8 years for her to draw, you little shit. He reached over and bit Luffy in his neck, hard. And lucky for Moshi, he was sitting on Luffy's other shoulder. Arg, Luffy growled. I ain't got a damn clue about fishmen, or how great they are. Luffy reached behind him and grabbed Arlong's nose. Nor do I know anything about her maps, but I finally know how to help her. Luffy snapped Arlong's nose, causing the fishman to reel back in pain. This room that she never wanted to be in. I cannot allow it to exist. I'll erase this place down to the very last trace. Luffy declared, the Den Mushi bobbing his head in agreement. Gomu Gomu no. Luffy lifted his foot up high, higher than the ceiling, and high enough for all the villagers and Nami and the rest of his crew to see. Don't get so conceited now. As if the mighty Arlong Park could ever be destroyed by the likes of you. Arlong growled, standing to his feet once more. He opened his mouth wide, exposing his razor-sharp teeth. Shark on. Tooth. Arlong bellowed, running towards Luffy with ferocious speed. Battle axe. Luffy cried, bringing his foot back down into the room. The Den Mushi couldn't do anything to stop what happened next. One moment he was sitting on Luffy's shoulder, glaring daggers at Arlong, and the next thing he knew he was being thrown out of the building. He couldn't see the ruckus that was going on behind him as he flew. He didn't know what Luffy was doing. All he knew was that he was flying and that he was scared out of his mind. Oi, it's Den. That snail is flying. Just what the hell is going on? The Den Mushi's eyes widened as he saw each of the villagers looking at him in awe. And there were 4 faces that he recognized the most, though one face in particular was standing out the most to him. I've got you, Moshi. She cried, holding her arms out for him. And in seconds everyone, including Usopp, Zoro, well, Zoro was asleep, but it's the thought that counts, and Sanji, were doing the same. They were holding out their arms so that they could catch him. Don't be scared, Moshi. Usopp chimed in. We've got you. And Moshi smiled widely, as he knew he was safe because his friends were going to catch him and he knew he would be just fine. He fell right into Nami's arms, and she softly patted his head before placing him onto her shoulder. The Den Mushi stayed close to her ear, smiling widely, glad to have his friend back. He then looked over at the wreckage that was once Arlong Park. Luffy. Nami began to rush towards the rubble, but was held back by Johnny and Yosaku. Brother. Johnny muttered. Arlong Park is destroyed. Which one of them won? Just what the hell happened in there? Usopp scurried over to Nami's side and they both shared glances of worry. And suddenly, from the wreckage, a tall figure stood up with blood running down his arms, his fists clenched, and his black hair messier than usual. Luffy. Nami, Usopp, Yosaku, and Johnny cried in unison. Luffy took a deep breath. Nami. You're my crewmate, you're my nakama. Got it. Nami could feel the wind blowing her hair around as his words reached her ears. Tears began to spill down her cheeks, and this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of joy. Gee, got it, she replied, wiping away her tears with her wrists. Arlong Park has been destroyed. The villagers cheered in happiness, throwing down their weapons and hugging each other. Shishishi. Luffy grinned. Click. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is Memories by Keke XP. Chapter 18. Luffy's Promise, in Moshi's Shell. The villagers continued cheering, jumping up and down and rejoicing. Nojiko tightly hugged Sanji, who was throwing his hands up as his eyes became heart-shaped. Genzo had his hat off and was shaking his head, crying happy tears in silence. Zoro was lazily sitting there, but was smirking nonetheless. Usopp was bravely smiling, nodding his head. I knew we could do it. I never doubted us for a second. Oi, Zoro deadpanned. That's enough celebrating. A voice suddenly called, and everyone stopped cheering and turned to face a certain marine. What a lucky day it is for me, chi. Nezumi smirked. I'd like to thank you all for showing me a very exhilarating battle. Whether by sheer luck or not, I'd have never guessed that the fishmen would actually be defeated by a bunch of no-name pirates. His fleet of men stood behind him, all armed with guns and other weapons. But thanks to you, the money that I had to hand over to Arlong as well as all the other riches in Arlong Park belong to me. Don't even bother trying to pick up your arms. I, Captain Nezumi of the 16th branch, shall hereby take credit for this victory. Chi. Zoro appeared behind Nezumi, and grabbed him by the back of his shirt. Nezumi let out a loud, girly squeak. It ain't nice to be a wet blanket, when people are celebrating. Zoro stated darkly, and his words obviously held a deeper meaning. If Nezumi were to rain on Nami's parade, Zoro would have no qualms about killing him. Click. Moments later, Nezumi and his men were lying on the ground looking pretty beat. Usopp, Zoro, Sanji, and Luffy stood above them with looks of indifference. Nezumi raised up a shaky finger. Go ahead, he slurred. Lay Eben one binger on me, I dare chew. I swear you won't get away with it. Geez, he's still able to talk. Sanji tsked and rolled his eyes. Nami came up behind Luffy, with the Den Den Mushi still on her shoulder, and placed Luffy's hat back onto his head. They smiled at each other before Nami bent down beside Nezumi. This, she began, is for shooting my beautiful sister, Nojiko, and defiling Belmir's orange fields. Nami pulled out her staff and swiftly swung it at him, hitting Nezumi directly in his face and sending him flying into the sea. Thanks Nami. Nojiko grinned. He still needs more beatings. Genzo muttered stubbornly. Boss. The Marines cried when Nezumi poked his head out of the water. Nami pulled on Nezumi's whiskers. Go clean up after the fishmen. She began. And help rebuild Gosa village. And you are to not touch any money left here in Arlong Park. That's this island's money. Ow. Nezumi whimpered in pain. Alright, I'll do what you say. And one more thing. Nami glared darkly at the Marine captain, and so did Moshi. Give me back my money. Nezumi pulled away from her, still treading in the water. I will. Listen well, you rotten pirates. Especially you, Straw Hat Boy. You said your name was Luffy, correct? And you're the captain, right? Let me just say that you are gonna get your desserts for what you did to me soon enough. I'll make you pay. With that being said, he and his crew of Marines swam away. Quote. He just said you're gonna get your desserts. Sanji muttered. Luffy put his hands onto his hips. How did he know that I deserve to be Pirate King? That's not what he meant, dumbass. Zoro stated, rolling his eyes. What do we do, guys? Usopp frowns. What happens if he really does get back at us? Hey everyone, one of the villagers yelled. Let's not keep this to ourselves. Let's tell the whole island that Arlong Park has been destroyed. Another round of cheering began as the villagers ran off to do just that, and not one of them had a frown on their face. To think that we would be saved by pirates. The doctor of the village shook his head. You never know. Genzo chuckled softly. Click. This party is so much fun. Luffy grinned, and the snail on his shoulder bobbed his head in agreement. Even Den Den is having fun. Nami called him Moshi earlier. Zoro said. So I guess his name is Moshi. Moshi sounds like a good name to me. Sanji shrugged. Moshi. Shishishi. Luffy grinned at the snail. So we'll be calling you Moshi from now on. Moshi only swayed from side to side in happiness. He was now really a part of the crew. He had his own name and everything. I sure ate a lot. Sanji grinned. Feels nice to stuff yourself every now and then. Oi Sanji, was there something on that last melon you ate just now? Luffy asked, giving him a serious look as he held 3 large chunks of meat in each hand. What's with all that meat you're holding onto? Zoro deadpanned. Yeah. Sanji lit up another cigarette. It was a melon with raw ham called raw ham melon. Raw ham melon. Luffy took a bite out of his meat. Where'd you get it? Not sure, since there's food put out everywhere for all the villagers. Must have picked it up from somewhere. I'll go find it then. Luffy nodded firmly, as if he was about to complete a hard task. Well, now that I've finished eating. Sanji stood up and dusted himself off. It's time to flirt with the ladies. His eyes became heart-shaped as he danced off to find some ladies to flirt with. Luffy walked past the crowd, still searching for food, when he noticed Usopp standing on a stack of tables. It is I, he yelled. Captain Usopp, the warrior who defeated one of the fishmen. Allow me to sing you a song. The people in the crowd cheered, throwing up their hands and yelling for Usopp to do his song. Some even asked for his autograph. Raw ham melon, where is it? Luffy wandered past the festival and up a hill. He blinked in confusion. There's no food here. He saw Genzo staring at him and shrugged. Oh well, I'll head back now. Wait just a minute. Genzo's sweat dropped. A grave. Luffy looked past Genzo, and at the brown cross that sat on top of the ground. Did someone die? Yes. Genzo replied. But it was a very long time ago. Right. Luffy bowed his head, and so did Moshi. Well, he or she has my deepest condiments. Conditions. The word is condolences. Right, that. Hey kid. Genzo closed his eyes for a moment. Nami said she'll join your crew again to be a pirate, it'll be a dangerous journey. He opened his eyes and clenched his fists. So if you ever do something to steal her smile away, I'll personally come and kill you. Well, I'm really never going to. Understand. Genzo bellowed, narrowing his eyes and shaking just a little. Quote. Understood. Luffy replied, nodding his eyes solemnly. Click. Oi Ben Beckman. Luffy sat beside Nojiko, holding the Den Den Mushi up so that he could see both of their faces. This here is Nami's older sister, Nojiko. Hello. Nojiko laughed and waved at the camcorder. Nojiko is really nice. Luffy grinned. And she's really smart. And she says she's heard of you. That's right. Nojiko shrugged. Ben Beckman, legendary first mate of red-haired Shanks. I hear that you're the smartest man in the East Blue. But if you are the smartest man, Nami is most definitely the smartest female. Hear that? Luffy laughed. My navigator could give your first mate a run for his money, Shanks. Nojiko giggled. I don't know about that, Luffy. I just know that Nami is smarter than what most would think. The ocean is a vast place, so I'm sure there will be a lot of people like Nami and Ben Beckman. PSH. Luffy smiled his signature smile. That doesn't matter. Nami's in the future Pirate King's crew. Future Pirate King EH. Nojiko placed a strand of her thick blue hair behind her ear. That's what you aim for. Well I believe you can do it. Shishishi. Hear that Shanks? Nojiko believes me. I will become Pirate King, just you and Ben and Ace and everyone watch. Click. Guys, I just had the best idea. Luffy looked at Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp with a wide smile. He set Moshi onto a table and placed his hands onto his hips. We should paint Moshi's shell. Why should we paint his shell? Sanji tapped his foot impatiently, wanting to go back to flirting with the girls. It's fine the way it is. Moshi's body was a very pale white, and his shell was also a pale white color. The snail had never really cared about what color his shell was, so he was surprised when Luffy suggested to paint it. Sanji, how can you say that? Luffy pouted. Moshi's shell looks so boring to me. So let's decorate it. I usually could care less, but maybe we should paint Moshi's shell. Zoro stated. There are other transponder snails that have white shells, so what if we lose Moshi and can't tell which one he is because he has the same shell color as all the other snails? Hey, that makes sense. Usopp nodded. It would be a lot easier to figure out which one is Moshi in case he does get lost. So then what color should we paint him? Sanji asked, lighting up yet another cigarette. Red. Luffy stated. Green. Zoro yawned, crossing his arms. Yellow. Usopp nodded, sticking his long nose into the air. Sanji's sweat dropped. Way to agree on a specific color. I'm gonna be future Pirate King, so his shell should be red. But green would be a much better color. Green would be like a mark of pride. Zoro stated, his expression serious. Yellow would be a mark of pride too. Usopp argued. Yeah, pride for what? The long-nosed tribe or something. Hey now. Sanji slammed his hands onto the table. Here's how I see it. Moshi's shell has 7 swirls, right? There are 5 of us in the crew so far. So we should paint each swirl a color that represents each of us. That's actually a really good idea. Usopp nodded. Alright, leave it up to me. Usopp picked up the paintbrush. Who wants to be the biggest swirl? Me. Luffy raised his hands, which still had meat in them. Make it red. Right. Usopp dipped the paintbrush into the red paint before he painted the largest swirl on Moshi's shell red as Luffy's vest. Who wants to be second biggest? That should be Zoro, since he's my first mate. Luffy declared. I'm surprised that you know what first mate means. Usopp muttered dryly as he painted the second largest swirl green. Of course I do. Luffy picked his nose with his pinky. I'm not stupid. Nami Swan should be next. Sanji added. Since she was technically the third person to join. And because she's beautiful. Usopp's sweat dropped and painted the third swirl orange as Nami's hair. I swear, I'm on a boat full of idiots. He painted the swirl after Nami's yellow, since he did join the crew after her. And now for the love cook. Zoro stated, crossing his arms over his chest. TCH. Sanji rolled his eyes. Stupid Marimo. What did you call me? Done. Usopp painted the 5th swirl blue, as Sanji's shirt. There. Now Moshi is officially a part of the crew too. Yosh. Luffy grinned. Good. There's still 2 swirls that haven't been colored in though. Sanji took a long drag from his cigarette. I guess that means we'll be recruiting more people then. Zoro yawned. More people? Why, I already have 8,000 men under my fleet. Usopp boasted, sticking his nose into the air once more. Oi. Zoro, Sanji, and Luffy sweat dropped. That's an obvious lie. Click. Chapter 19. Goodbye Kokoyashi. To Louchtown we go. We must now return back to our jobs as bounty hunters. Yosaku stated. So thank you for all of your help up until this point. Though we must say goodbye, may we meet once again someplace else in the future. Johnny added. I see then. Zoro leaned over the railing of the Going Merry, Moshi sitting on the railing beside him. Take care. Quote. Hey, where's Nami? Usopp asked, looking around. Maybe she's not coming. Zoro crossed his arms and pretended to not care, but anyone could see that he cared about Nami more than he let on. Wah. Sanji glared at Luffy. Is Nami really not coming? Hey you. Luffy pointed at Sanji. That raw ham melon you were talking about wasn't there. Luffy. Nami yelled, standing with her hands on her hips and her feet planted firmly on the ground. Set sail. And then she broke into a sprint, heading for the Going Merry. She's running over here. Usopp blinked. What do we do? She said set sail, so I guess we should set sail. Luffy replied. Genzo clenched his fists. Don't tell me that she's planning on leaving without letting us say a word of thanks or goodbye. Nami continued to run, weaving between all of the villagers old and young, male and female. Nami, stop. At least let us thank you guys for all that you have done. Your boat is taking off. Nami, wait. Genzo reached his hand out in desperation. I cannot allow things to end this way. You sure it's okay to let her leave like this? Sanji asked, letting out a puff of smoke as he remembered his own parting with a certain chef on a certain boat in a certain sea. It's her goodbye, so let's let her decide. Luffy replied. Nami suddenly jumped towards the Mary, stretching her long legs and somehow managing to hop onto the boat. The female stood in front of her new friends with no expression on her face at first before she smirked and lifted her shirt up just a little. Wallets, checkbooks, and money all came tumbling down and Moshi couldn't help but wonder just how she had done it. My wallet is gone. Mine too. Same here. Where's my money? Nami held up $1 and winked, sticking out her tongue as if she were 8 again. Take care, everyone. The villagers stared at Nami and the ship that was leaving the island for a few seconds before it finally sank in. She still hasn't changed a bit, has she? Usopp deadpanned. Is she gonna betray us again? Zoro rolled his eyes. Which? Nice job, Nami Swan. Sanji held up a thumbs up. Hey kid, Genzo bellowed, though he was standing there with a calm expression. Don't forget our promise. Luffy grinned and gave the old man a thumbs up in reply. Goodbye everyone. I'm off now. Nami waved her arms and smiled her pretty smile, glad that her village was safe and happy that in the end they all still loved her. Take care, Na-chan. Come back soon, you little brat. We'll miss you, Nami-chan. Nojiko smiled, closing her eyes and crossing her arms under her bust. That little runt, she better live. Hey. Gucha, let's introduce the crew. Nami smiled at Moshi before she picked him up and began walking. There's me, the oh-so-cunning navigator. She winked. I'm a total cutie. She pointed the Den Mushi at Zoro, who was lazily leaning against the mast of the ship. Here's Mr. Frowns a lot. Oh Cammy, I hope I never have to wake up to that face. Zoro deadpanned. You'd think that she would be hugging and crying against me after having just helped save her village. He muttered sarcastically. I am thankful. She smiled fondly. Don't get so worked up, Zoro. Zoro only smirked in reply. TCH. Here's Long Nose. She pointed Moshi at Usopp, who was just walking out of the boys' room. Long Nose. PFF'd, actually I'm Captain Usopp. He stuck his nose into the air and crossed his arms over his chest proudly. I've got a whole fleet of men under me, and I'm known as a brave warrior of the sea. And, moving on, Nami turned and walked away from him. Hey, Usopp's sweat dropped. Here's Sanji-kun. Nami walked into the small kitchen and smiled at Sanji, who danced in delight at her presence though his face was shadowed by his blonde hair. He's an amazing cook. He makes the best dishes. Nami Swan. Sanji twirled around. I'm going to make a delicious drink just for you. Thank you. Nami giggled before leaving the small kitchen and leaving Sanji to think about the many ways he would woe his precious Nami Swan. And finally, we have the future Pirate King himself. Nami's wide smile turned soft as she watched Luffy sit on his special place, which was on the Going Merry's head. The rubber man turned and smiled widely at Moshi, holding up 2 fingers. Shishishi. I'm on my way to becoming Pirate King, Shanks. Gucha. Nay, I'm really happy. Luffy smiled at Moshi, the wind blowing his jet black locks around wildly. The two were perched on Mary's head, enjoying the beautiful view of the sun setting in the sky, its orange-red color contrasting beautifully against the deep, dark blue abyss that was the sea. I'm really going on an adventure. Luffy stated, pulling his knees up to his chest. I'm really on my way to becoming Pirate King. Moshi smiled happily, bobbing his little head in happiness. His body was no longer the pale white it used to be, it was shining a little, as if it was slowly turning into a silverish color. I've already gathered plenty of strong crewmates. Luffy continued. Zoro, my first mate, he's really strong. He's great with swords, though he's no fun at times. And who knows, he might even defeat that one guy, Mihawk, one day. Luffy closed his eyes and continued to smile. There's Nami, she's my navigator. And she's probably better than you, Ben Beckman. Luffy stuck his tongue out at the camcorder and laughed. She's really smart, and a really good person. But she likes to steal my wallet a lot. Oh well, shishishi. Luffy opened his eyes once more and smiled fondly. Usopp is so much fun to be around. He says really funny things, and I can't believe he's related to Yasopp. Your noses look nothing alike. Luffy yawned loudly, stretching his long arms and feet. There's our cook, Sanji, who prefers to keep his face hidden from the camcorder. He's shy around the camera. But he's an amazing cook. You've gotta try his food one day. Hey, Luffy put his hand onto his hat and shook his head. This is my crew. These people, they are my nakama. We've already begun our journey, here in the East Blue. And we're on our way to the Grand Line. Just you wait, Shanks. Ace. Minna, I'm gonna be Pirate King soon. Shishishi. Gucha. Another price increase. Nami huffed. Don't you think that it's getting a bit expensive? Caw. The messenger bird crowed in reply. Nami out some belly into his little red bag and took the newspaper from the bird. Raise the price again and I won't be buying your papers anymore. What are you getting so riled up about? Usopp asked, sitting crossed-legged on the deck as he worked on something. It's just a newspaper. Daily expenses add up, don't you know? She shrugged. I thought you were done with saving up money. Don't be stupid. Nami stuck her tongue out at him. From now on I'm going to be saving up money for no one but me. There's no way I'm gonna be a broke pirate. Okay. Usopp sighed. I'm in the middle of developing my secret Tabasco star. He pointed at what he was working on, which was some red liquid sloshing around in a clear glass. So keep away. He held up a bottle of the red stuff. Any enemy who gets this in their eye will be rendered completely helpful. Ow. Usopp cried out in pain when Luffy suddenly fell onto the bottle, causing it to squirt into Usopp's eye. Come on Sanji. Luffy sat up and pouted, completely oblivious to Usopp's screams of pain. Can't I have at least one? Not a chance. These are Nami's beloved orange trees. I won't allow anyone to lay even a single finger on them. Sanji replied, crossing his arms over his chest, his eyes still covered by his blonde hair. Oh well. Luffy stood up and smiled happily. I'm in a good mood so I'll drop it then. Nami swung, rest assured my defense powered by love is infallible. Sanji continued, his eyes turning to his hearts as he continued to twirl and dance around. Thanks, Sanji. Nami replied, opening up the newspaper as Usopp continued to writhe in pain. We're finally on our way to the Grand Line. Luffy stretched his arms and legs. Yosh, the world's in such turmoil. Nami muttered, flipping through the newspaper. Another coup d'etat in Villa. Nami blinked as a flyer suddenly fell out of the newspaper. The flyer caught the attention of all the pirates, even Usopp. It's a flyer. Luffy blinked. Gucha. Look, Minna. Luffy shoved his wanted poster into Moshi's face. Looks like we are wanted men now. It says 30 million belly. And there Luffy was, smiling his strange smile in the picture and waving his hand. Once again, you fail to understand the gravity of your situation.
Yo, quick pause, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new here, share this video, and tell me in the comments which part you're loving the most.
Nami's head dropped. You do realize that this means your life is at risk. With that bounty, I'm sure the Marine HQ as well as other strong bounty hunters will come after you. Look, my picture is here for the whole world to see. Usopp pointed at himself, or rather the back of his head in the bounty photo. I might be famous. That's just the back of your head. Sanji rolled his eyes. Don't be jealous now. Usopp grinned. Once we become more infamous we might all get one. Quote. With this, we can't afford to just loiter around in East Blue much longer. Nami muttered, putting her finger on her chin in thought. Alright men, let's head to the Grand Line. Luffy yelled. Aye. Sanji and Usopp yelled, fist pumping happily. Hey, I see an island. Zoro called. Nami picked up Moshi and everyone walked towards the railing where Zoro was standing. Indeed there was an island, and indeed they were approaching it. That island is proof that we are close to the Grand Line. Nami stated. On that island, there's an infamous town called Loungetown. It's also known as the twin of the beginning and the end. It's the birthplace of the former pirate king Roger, as well as his execution spot. So that's where the former pirate king died. Luffy stared at the island in wonder. Shall we head there? Nami asked, tucking a strand of tangerine-colored orange hair behind her ear. Yosh, to Loungetown we go, Luffy yelled, pointing towards the town with a huge smile on his face. Gucha. Chapter 20, Usopp vs. Daddy, and a Mysterious Girl. Wow. Usopp gaped at his surroundings in awe. What a big town. So the pirate age all began from here, Sanji shrugged and lit up yet another cigarette. The Straw Hats were standing under a banner that read, Loungetown, taking in the sight of the large town. People were walking around, smiling and laughing. Some people were trying to sell various things to the people on the busy streets, and others, mainly kids, were running around and asking for money. It was a very busy town, one could not argue that. Okay then, Luffy stood up straight. I'm gonna go see the execution stand. Seems like I can find some good ingredients and food here. Sanji smiled. As well as some fine women to flirt with. I'm gonna go look for some equipment to buy. Usopp declared, putting his hands onto his hips and smiling in determination. Moshi's sweat dropped but bobbed his head anyway, happy to be on Usopp's shoulder for a change. I do have something I want to buy too. Zoro stated, but I have no money. I'll happily lend you some money. Nami stated, leaning her head towards him and crossing her arms behind her back. At 300% interest that is. Gucha. Haha, I've got everything I need. Usopp cheerfully stated, walking through the busy streets of Loungetown with a large green backpack strapped to his shoulders, and with Moshi perched on his shoulder. There isn't anything Usopp, brave warrior of the sea, can't face now. He continued walking down the street, smiling happily until a thought struck him. Hold on, I feel like I'm forgetting something important, that's it. A top-ranked sniper like myself should have a sharp pair of goggles to look through. He nodded. I'm gonna get the best pair I can find. I don't care about what they cost, unless it's something I can't afford. Moshi's sweat dropped, but shrugged anyhow. He was happy to accompany his long-nosed friend. For once it wasn't often that he was able to go anywhere with Usopp, so he took this as a special day. Special goggles, here I come. Usopp yelled, racing through the town while somehow still carrying the huge, green backpack. Gucha, these are them. Usopp smiled, giddy because he was finally going to be able to buy some goggles. These are perfect. Just right. The long-nosed male walked up to the counter and placed his goggles, along with Moshi, onto it. Hey, lady, he began. I really like these goggles. What do you think of them? The woman examined the goggles. Ah, these are brand new. They are the top of the line, and they come from a company in the North Blue. They only come once a year. You do have money, correct? She glared at him. Ah, I left my money in my backpack, outside. Usopp began to walk away. I'll go get them. He called behind him just as a little girl with long blonde hair and a green dress walked up to the counter with an angelic smile. I'll take these, she stated, pointing at the goggles on the counter. Usopp tripped and fell face first onto the floor. The woman behind the counter gave the little girl a kind smile. Why, of course, and what an adorable little girl you are. I happen to know that these are the only goggles of this kind on this whole island, so my aren't you lucky? Hey, Usopp stood up and pointed at the girl. Those are my goggles, so drop them. The little girl stood there smiling, and for a second Usopp was confused, and then she scurried towards him and opened her big blue eyes. You snooze you lose, Grandpa, she sweetly told him. She then pushed past him and skipped out the door. Gucha, hey, little girl, Usopp yelled, running after her with Moshi now on his shoulder. He skidded to a stop in front of Blonde and huffed. First off, there's no possible way that you could think I'm an old man. I'm more like an older brother, right? HMPH, she winked. You smell like an old man. I am not an old man. He began jumping up and down rather comically. Whatever, just give me back those goggles. I saw them first, so they're mine. They're mine, they're mine, they're mine, they're mine. You better watch your mouth. She gave him a snooty look. I'm friends with the Marines, I'll have you know, and I can get them to come over here and beat you up. The Marines, that's right, she smiled innocently once more. And their captain is a close personal friend of my family. He's kinda like my uncle. Why you little? He glowered at her before sticking his nose into the air. Well, I'm a captain too. Arlong Park was destroyed by these two hands. He held up his hands. There were hundreds of fishmen. And the last thing they saw was the great and oh so powerful Captain Usopp. They were begging for me to finish them. Now I have a bounty of 30 million belly on my head, so the Marines don't scare me one bit. 30 million belly, huh? She smirked. That's right. Usopp stood proudly. Papa. She suddenly waved her arms. Don't call me Papa. He frowned. I'm not that old either. She suddenly ran around Usopp and towards someone else. Papa, I brought a present for you. It's these goggles. Happy birthday, Papa. The man she was talking to sniffed loudly, pulling down his hat. His mustache seemed to twitch as he did so. Oh my girl. Carol, you are honestly the most angelic little girl any father could ever ask for. He stated, as his huge black eyes began to water. I love you so much, Papa. The girl, Carol, cheerfully replied. Usopp stared at them in shock. What's with that girl? He muttered to himself. Quote, but Papa. Carol glared at Usopp. That weird old man is being mean and has been trying to jack your present. Now dear. He put his hand on her head. Don't say, jacked. It's not proper for a young lady to use such a word. He smiled sweetly at Carol before his whole demeanor changed. He glared at Usopp darkly, narrowing his eyes in the process. Are you the gentleman who's been bothering my adorable little daughter? And no. Usopp replied, his legs shaking quite a bit. I was just. Here's something else. She smirked. He has a bounty of 30 million belly. Oh. He glanced over at Usopp. A bounty worth 30 belly, huh? Let's take a look. He pulled out a stack of papers and began to leaf through them. 600, 1.3 million, 30 million. He peered at the paper. Monkey D. Luffy, huh? For a first bounty, that's impressive. Usopp slowly began to step away, but stopped when Carol's father suddenly glanced at him and spoke. Where do you think you're going? Okay, that's not me in that poster, as you can obviously tell. I was just pretending to be a bad guy. Bye. He waved cheerily, before he began to turn and walk away. See ya. Carol's father pointed to the back of Usopp's head in the photo. That's you. Ah. He threw up his hands and his eyes went wide rather comically. He turned around and took a few steps towards the two. Alright, you caught me. But go ahead and try to lay a finger on me and you'll see what happens. My Captain Luffy won't sit idly by and watch his crewmate be put into danger. You couldn't even imagine the amount of pain he could inflict on you. Usopp stuck his long nose into his face. You've got your daughter to worry about. Why risk your life over this? You're right. It's not worth it. He closed his eyes and sighed. Anyone with 30 million berries on his head is no ordinary person, that's for sure. Papa, you can beat him. Carol grinned. You're the strongest man ever. And you aren't afraid of anything. No darling, I don't have to prove anything. I just need to be strong enough to get us by in life. He replied, so long as you think I'm the greatest, that's all that matters to me. Understand, Papa? Well, I'm glad you came to your senses, fool. Usopp smirked. Give me back my goggles and just maybe I'll let you escape with your life. Don't worry, I'll pay for them too. He's letting you go, old man. Carol glared at Usopp. If were you, I would be running for my life. You, okay fine. Her papa suddenly cut in. If that's how you want it, then we will settle this dispute like gentlemen. Gentlemen, Usopp blinked. Here, he tossed a gun towards Usopp. Oh, a duel. Usopp held up the gun and nodded. Alright, I think I can handle that. If you win, the goggles are yours. He took off his shawl, only to reveal that he had many pistols strapped all around his stomach and chest area. What? Usopp gawked. 3, 6, 9, 30 pistols. That's the same number of pistols as Daddy the Father. Yeah, Daddy the Father nodded. That's me. Gucha. Good luck, long nose. Is the duel even worth watching? We all know what's gonna happen. A crowd had gathered to watch the duel. It wasn't often that anyone took on Daddy the Father, and anyone who did ended up a bloody mess. Moshi was sitting on the ground, watching Usopp as he stood back to back against Daddy the Father. Moshi was cheering for Usopp, of course, bobbing his little head and wiggling his little white silver body. Seconds later he felt himself being picked up and was surprised to see Nami standing there with a look of complete exasperation. This idiot, she muttered. Usopp, just what the hell are you doing? Nami. Usopp glanced over at her. Why the hell are you facing Daddy the Father in a duel? Are you nuts? You're not helping. Usopp yelled back. You never have anything nice to say. You get one shot. Carol suddenly spoke. Are you ready? Both men nodded. 1. Carol yelled and they stepped away from each other. Though Usopp was shaking, it was obvious that he was nervous. 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. They continued to take steps away from each other, Daddy looking nonchalant and Usopp shaking with absolute fear. 7. Carol continued. 8. Knee. Usopp turned around and threw something onto the ground, which caused a lot of smoke to appear. Usopp turned and tried to run, but was stopped when Daddy suddenly fired at him. Usopp dropped his gun and stood still, shaking way more than what's thought to be humanly possible. The sniper dropped to the ground as Carol rushed towards her father. Papa, that was amazing, she exclaimed. You're truly the best. The crowd began to walk away, shaking their heads at Usopp. What a pathetic joke. This guy is a wimp. All I did was shoot the coward's gun away. Daddy stated. What were you thinking? Carol glared at Usopp. Have you no shame? Cheating during a duel. You should be ashamed of yourself, you're so pathetic. I'm really sorry, please forgive me. Usopp bowed in front of Daddy. I'm just too scared to die this young. Killing me would be too easy for you, right? So please, don't shoot me. You could just let me go, couldn't you? Daddy pointed a gun at Usopp's face. No, wait. Nami set Moshi down and ran in front of Usopp, holding out her arms. Nami. Usopp looked up at her and smiled in relief. If you want money, my friend here has tons she can give you. Please spare me. I'm begging you, sir. What the hell? She tapped her blue sandaled foot impatiently and glared at Usopp half-heartedly. So, now you're cowarding behind a woman. Daddy shook his head. Listen, Nami began, but was cut off when Usopp stood up and pushed her out of the way. Leave Nami out of this. Usopp glared at him. She has nothing to do with this. I'm the one who got myself into this situation, and nobody can get me out of it. It's all on me. Usopp, what are you trying to do? Nami frowned, though she was just a bit touched. Please, just leave Nami out of it. Usopp told him, shaking his head and ignoring her question. Usopp. Daddy blinked. Did she just call you Usopp? Yes. Usopp cautiously replied. That couldn't be. Daddy narrowed his eyes. You wouldn't happen to know a man by the name of Yasopp of the red-haired pirates, do you? Yasopp. Yeah, that's my dad's name. Usopp blinked. Wait, are you saying that you and my father are friends? So then you are his son. Daddy the father sighed, glancing at the ground. Papa. Carol looked up at him in confusion. I've met your dad, and I've never spoken a word to a single soul about that fateful day, until now that is. We met on a port on a very hot and dry day like today. To sum it all up, he beat me in a duel but he let me live. So that's why you left the Marines to become a bounty hunter. It all makes sense now. Nami nodded. Papa, no. Carol frowned. A pirate didn't spare your life. Tell me it's not true. Tell me you killed him, right? Usopp. Wow. Nami stared at him. Your father is amazing. He beat Daddy Masterson in a duel. He hasn't forgotten about you either. Even now as he is traveling the seas, he still has an image of you as a little toddler. She was surprised when she saw tears beginning to well in his eyes. Usopp. It's all right. We understand. There's no way that you could. Usopp replied. That's not the reason why I'm crying. There's more to it. I get it. I understand why you told me that story about my father. You told me that so I would try to be more like him. Most people would just bury that story and get on with their lives, but you aren't afraid of anything. Not even shame. A coward would never do what you just did. Usopp. Nami continued to stare at him. Carol. Usopp looked down at the little blonde-haired girl. Your father is the bravest man alive. Men who are big and strong are easy to find, but the ones who put their honor on the line are 1 in a million. So that's why I can't accept your dad's mercy. If I did, it would only bring him more shame. I have one choice, and that is to face my death. Usopp looked back at Daddy. Give me another chance. I have to prove to myself that I am not a coward. A life or death fight should settle things. All right. Daddy nodded. Choose the weapon you are most masterful with. This will be our final duel. Gucha, you must hit that weather vane. Daddy pointed towards the blue whale of a weather vane sitting atop a tall building. Usopp gulped, holding up his slingshot. Really? That? Daddy pointed his gun at Usopp. If you miss. Right. Usopp nodded. You'll shoot me through the heart. So this shot determines whether I live or die with honor. Usopp sighed, putting on his goggles and stretched his slingshot, aiming for the weather vane. There's no way that he can shoot that far with a slingshot. Carol whispered. Usopp paid her no mind and continued to aim. To Usopp the world seemed to go in slow motion. Carol had her hands over her eyes. Moshi was watching with wide eyes from his place on Nami's shoulder. Nami was ready to fight if necessary. And Daddy Masterson kept his gaze on Usopp, his gun still pointed at the long-nosed male. Seconds later, he released the slingshot and watched as it went soaring towards the weather vane. Usopp, did you miss? Nami whispered, clasping her hands together. Papa, I change my mind. Please don't kill him. Carol tugged on her father's shirt. Papa, no, please don't. I can't shoot him, Daddy replied, because he shot right through the crown. Nami grinned. Ah, he did, you did it, Usopp. He's right, you're as good of a shot as your old man. Daddy smiled at Usopp as he slumped to the ground. Go to the Grand Line. You'll find him there. I'm sure he'll be proud. A bird suddenly swooped down as Nami and Usopp were cheering, and picked Moshi up. Neither Nami nor Usopp seemed to notice, but Carol did. The blonde blinked and waved at Moshi as he was carried away by his shell. Moshi squirmed and wiggled, but nothing he did caught the attention of Nami or Usopp. And so he flew away. Gucha. Moshi could feel himself falling. The damn bird had ran into a wall, and now he was falling and falling at a fast rate, and there was nothing he could do about it. The snail wanted to cry, he didn't want to die just yet. His adventures with the Straw Hat Pirates was just beginning, and he wanted to see the Grand Line just as badly as his friends. Memories of their journey so far played in his head. He remembered how Luffy had found him in the forest and had tried to eat him, but a friend of Luffy's had stopped him from doing so, some kid with freckles and black hair, and the two somehow became friends. He remembered how he used to fear Zoro's very presence, but now he was used to Zoro's threatening aura and even cuddled against the brave swordsman when he felt lonely. He remembered how he had instantly taken a liking to Nami and Usopp since they were like him, a bit cowardly, but still brave. And he remembered when he tried Sanji's food for the very first time. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. And now he was falling from the sky, and into a crowd of people, and he would most likely never see them again. The snail sighed, so the gods had decided that his time on Earth was up, He'd miss the Straw Hat group. And he closed his eyes as he felt himself finally land. Moshi, I thought your shell looked familiar. Moshi blinked and was surprised to see that he was in the arms of Roronoa Zoro. The small snail smiled in surprise, as tears threatened to spill from his huge gray eyes. Zoro sighed and placed him onto his shoulder. Looks like you've had a rough day, I guess you can stay with me since I don't see the others around. Seems like that monster ain't with you today. It's because of you that our boss is in prison. Zoro and Moshi turned and stared as two tall, unattractive men towered over a woman with short, dark, blue hair. If you still haven't learned your lesson, then I shall gladly be your opponent. The woman replied, glaring up at them. Did I just hear that correctly? One of the men chuckled. A little miss like yourself is gonna be our opponent. When you die, the other man began, holding up his fists. Tell that monster friend of yours that our dream of going to the Grand Line was broken because of him. The two lunged for the small woman, and Zoro began to take steps towards her, ready to help her out, and was shocked when the woman pulled out a sword and slashed both of them with ease. The two men fell to the ground coughing up blood before fainting, probably from blood loss or something. The girl took a step forward, only to trip over her own feet. Her glasses fell off as she fell onto the ground, her sword dropping beside her. The crowd that had gathered began chuckling at her. Aren't you a strong one, miss? Brave girl. Clumsy too. My glasses. The woman began to desperately search the ground for her glasses, frowning as she did so. Zoro bent down in front of her and picked up her glasses. Looking for these. The woman looked up and gave him a bright smile as she accepted the glasses. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the trouble. Moshi was able to get a better view of her face this time. She had big, dark, black eyes and short, dark, raven hair. Well, She stood up, not noticing Zoro's gaping face. See ya around, Gucha.